Anyway, there we go. So,
This is a bit you either love or you hate.
so replete with an 80s rocker's wig and not touching the twins.
You have to explain who this is based on.
Well, we'll put the theme to Funhouse in the background.
Okay,
That's
because
fine.
no one's going to get Pat Sharp.
And everyone, well, they will now.
I've said Pat Sharp.
So there we go. Okay, there we go. And the new kid on the block, the enormously suspicious artist formerly known as Louis Mitchell.
Do I say hello?
You can say hello if you want.
Hello,
Well, and what's your actual real name?
Nicholas Jelly, or
So-
Nick. We'll go with Nick.
Nick. So, surprise guest, Nick Jelly. And my mildly dodgy, short-sighted Angel Delight. It's Harry England.
Hello. Said Angel, didn't he?
Yes. He's not, He's not deaf.
No, he's disappointed.
He's
now.
just short-sighted, as far as we know. And, Tom, go for your life.
Okay, last minute. Not Goldilocks, not Goldie Flocks, but Goldie Horns withered old hocks. That's your name this week.
Thank you very much.
The back of think of a wrinkly old veiny varicose vein calf.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
you're her hocks.
Okay.
Let's try saying that when you're drunk.
I won't, but thank you.
That's all right, Goldie.
Anyway, so welcome to the On The Level podcast. Tonight it's all about deception. So games that we have been deceived by. Either originally during their inception we were sold down the river, a river of lies, or we just read things into, or we read into things that we were expecting to get but didn't actually get. Or games that altered during development and turned into something
Rip-off.
with things that we didn't necessarily expect or want, and we're just sort of sold the dummy. As far as
Games
that's
that
concerned.
worshipped at the Church of Molyneux.
There's a lot of
Completely fucked us.
there's a lot of Molyneux to be had, and a lot of Molyneuxing, I think, as we will discuss throughout the evening. So why don't we start with Louis over there? Is it
Okay.
Louis or Lewis?
Louis.
Louis.
It
is
was
Louis.
was Louis.
Okay.
Right. We'll start with Hayes, because I don't think any of you guys would have jotted that down. The PS3 release.
I didn't. This would remind me. Was this Free Radical? Is it Free
I believe it
Radical?
was Free Radical, yeah. The thing that really sold me, as simple as it was, I was fairly young when it came out. The youngest one here, of course. The cover art really struck me. And
Is this the guy with the cracked visor?
cracked yellow visor.
I can picture that and that alone. I know
That's,
nothing about
that's
the
pretty
game,
much all I
otherwise.
think of when I think of the game now, because when I played it, it was just shit, I guess. That's the only way to describe it.
It had something to do. Was it pollen or honey or?
Yeah,
honey.
the premise is interesting.
Something.
The premise was unique, to say the least. Really interesting. But upon release, it was generic. The AI was awful. The writing was below average. Graphics were very quickly outdone. At the time, the graphics were meant to be amazing,
Yeah.
but very quickly outdone.
This is a shooter, isn't it?
Yeah.
First person
What
shooter.
did Free Radical do? Was it? What did they come off the back of? They came off the back of something like Time Splitters or
Time Shift.
I can't think what it was. They'd done something. There was a heritage there that suggested this should have been.
I thought Time
Like,
Splitters
damn
was
good.
the same people who did Homefront. Because they
Oh,
have
they
a homage,
evolved
homage
into.
to it in the game, don't they?
Evolved into. Yeah, I can't remember who it was. But sorry, carry on, Louis.
I had a friend, and it was the first, probably one of the first multiplayer games I played, and it was just crap, disappointing. I mean,
We
But
said
had you had prior kind of
video game experience.
No, I was going to say, had you had prior sort of excitement for
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
You'd seen it advertised and thought that looks cool.
Yeah, because I hadn't had a console at the time, I don't think, and I watched loads of trailers on it, and it just looked like something that'd blow my mind and something I'd really want to play.
Because you were heavily into beekeeping.
Yeah, I love bees. I had a whole hive out the back, tended all day. But yeah, no, just disappointing.
because this was a PS3 exclusive, wasn't it?
PS3
So I think it was
exclusive.
sort of sold on the back of.
It was more hyped up than Watch Dogs at the time.
I remember it being very, very heavily hyped, and the problem is, unless you really can back it up, these things are just going to crash
Yeah.
and burn. If it's just average, people will savage it to pieces.
Yeah.
If you hype it up that much, if it had just come out, it would have been regarded as a fairly average shooter, 6 out of 10,
Yeah.
passable.
I don't
But the
remember
second you
any of this hype.
do you not?
No.
I do.
It was
I do remember it.
huge.
Passed me by.
Because I seem to recall when you took, what the hell was that? You took some supplement, which was, it was something like,
I couldn't remember.
I heard it was
now.
something to do with pollen.
it was something with honey or pollen or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but you would see enemies in yellow. They would sort of glow
Yeah, there's
yellow.
some kind of. Honestly, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. It's been so long since I played it. The campaign. I don't remember
jelly.
it, but
Yeah, it might have been
Pop
something
down
like
to
that.
Holland and Barrett's. You can only play this if you're on the royal jelly. Not you, as in like
Yeah.
Did you make royal jelly?
I'm not a fan of jelly at all. Don't eat jelly at all.
Royal
Oh, the
jelly.
irony.
vitamins.
The irony of it all.
I know, yeah. But I do like jam, so if it's in America, I'd be alright.
Yeah. Right, yes, no, I do remember the game coming out to a lot of fanfare and then a lot of fart fare.
I think it's probably just the trombone making that kind of
Yeah, that noise.
that noise. That
Yeah.
insert here.
Insert noise here.
It's a big fanfare and then a fart.
And it was just, I think it, like I said, if something is hyped up and then it fails to live up to even half of what people expected, they're quick to just tear it to shreds.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, deservedly so or not, because like I said, I can't remember what the hell they had done before. It was something fairly sort of popular or well received. Are you going to
And have a quick butchers.
have a quick butchers?
Well, I'm sure if I hadn't had all this Googling and hadn't looked at it for so long, I wouldn't have been as disappointed.
That's the thing of it, isn't it?
But because I'd spent so long waiting to play it,
Yeah,
and when I played it,
It was free radical.
yeah. There'll be some light background music while we're waiting.
Yeah, this is gonna be a long bit of background music.
That's right.
They've done nothing of note.
Hang on, there we go. I
Amazing.
found the link. Yeah, Time Splitters.
was
So
Time
maybe
Splitters.
those people who worked at Time Splitters went to do
Well, companies, they all do sort of break
to go
up.
to
and-
Gearbox
yeah.
to
They
make
do sort of-
Homefront, because there is a thing in Homefront where there's a tribute to Time Splitters.
Yeah, but obviously these companies, they do sort of break up and move
Well, they
houses,
were
move
bought
names.
by Crytek.
Ah,
Crytek bought everybody and then
Yeah.
killed them and then killed themselves.
yeah.
Ruined, I tell you.
Okay, so there we are. So that was
So you were
Haze,
right, yeah.
PlayStation 3 exclusive. Well, I guess yes, because Time Splitters, that was PlayStation 2.
Yep.
Time Splitters 3, wasn't that? It was on the Xbox as well, and the GameCube.
Free
Oh,
Radical
really?
still exists as Dambuster Studios.
Dambusters, who
And Dambusters
did
is Homefront.
Well, let's move on to Homefront.
They are all in Nottingham if you want to go there and point at them. Anybody out there?
Release the killer bees.
Yeah, if you want to go and put a load of bees outside there in Nottingham.
Just knock on the door, tie a pillowcase full of angry bees.
This is for Hayes. You fucks.
But no, Homefront. Tom, go.
Okay, it's an obvious one because obviously it's recently just come out. The first Homefront I was quite hyped for. I was doing the Nick thing, getting really hyped, watching all the trailers, looking at all. In my days, it would have been magazines and shit like that. So there wasn't so much sort of YouTube going on for things like videos and releases and gameplay footage. This was originally the company was called Chaos.
Oh yeah,
KAOS.
Yeah.
Chaos Developer or something they were called. Then they obviously got bought out by Crytek, turned into who we just talked about. But originally, did you know that the first one, how much do you think the budget was for Homefront to make that game, the first Homefront game?
Not a clue.
$60 million.
$50 million.
$50 million.
Which is a lot for what you got.
Yeah.
Because I bought that game and I was living in a shared flat and I was stoked for it.
So you shared.
I thought I said shed
I thought it
flat.
said shed flat.
So
Yeah.
Shared flat. A shed flat then. Well, it was a fucking shed. A shared flat. Say that when you're drunk, yeah? And I had a flatmate and he was going to go and buy it. And I said, well, once I've finished it, you can play it. I got it on 360, got home.
10 minutes later.
And literally 4 hours later, I said, oh man, do you want to try it out then? Well, you're not, and my flatmate said, you're not going to finish it? And I'd already finished it. It was like 4 hours and it ends on a bridge where this is no spoilers because it's shit. You won't want to finish it. It ends on a bridge and you've got these helicopters firing at you. It's a bit like, not Destiny, what was that shooter that's just come out, a big Ubisoft shooter?
What,
That's
Division.
online. Division, you have a crap boss at the end where it's kind of like a anti-tank helicopter thing.
Yeah.
It's pretty much that.
Okay.
But it was just crap. It ends on you in the bridge, just high-fiving your mates. And you walk off to go, yeah, we beat those
Sounds like
damn
some
Koreans.
kind of Top Gun thing. High five, nice music in the background.
It sounds
Jump.
good.
Yeah.
Shades,
It was
explosions in
shit.
the background.
Is there any homoerotic volleyball I can get excited about?
No, that would have made it better, but it
That makes
It
everything
did. So
better.
£50 million got
Everything.
them fuck all. And they thought it was so good. This is Crytek now that I'm talking about. They thought it was so good they bought them out, this Chaos developer, and said, we see potential in your titles after it had bombed in the shops. And we want you to make a sequel. And that sequel has been 4 years in development.
It's a long time.
A long time.
But didn't it start and then stop? Someone
Yeah.
took it over. So who was originally doing it? Because Dambuster is now the people...
I think Chaos was the original studio.
That's right. Sorry, Chaos. Yes.
They were doing it, and then Dambusters took over after Crytek bought it, and Crytek then went into liquidation, which meant it wasn't going to get made. No, THQ had it when it was Chaos. Then Crytek bought it. Then they took it and gave it to Dambusters, and then Crytek went into liquidation and started shutting everything down after TH had gone into liquidation. And again, that added up being 4 years worth of development hell, and it came out recently, Homefront 2, to this round of applause. And that was it. That's all you got. I might give you another one at the end of the show.
We had 2 last time as well, actually.
All right, well, one's enough for that game. It's a fucking wink. I don't know what the budget for Homefront 2 was, but I'd imagine it exceeded 50 million.
Oh, God, yeah.
And how can they live with another flop like that?
I suppose you get to that point. I was just thinking when you were saying that. I was thinking about the oiled-up Valkyrie on a beach with a volleyball.
Concentrate, man. Concentrate.
And after that, I was thinking specifically about... Obviously, there's around the table we got lists of games that had extraordinarily protracted development cycles. They either changed hands or they just took forever to do for whatever reason. And very rarely do these games that take forever or they get interrupted during the development actually come out well at all.
Or get done at all.
Or even
usually
at
that's
least
the death nail.
But I suppose you have those one of the things that something you might just get sharted out because you think, well, we'll try and make some money out of it, which is the only reason I can assume something like Ride to Hell, Retribution came out, and just because there were enough people that just, I would imagine that sells maybe even still now if you can still get your hands on it.
Probably sells just because of how bad it is.
How bad it is, so people can just sort of YouTube the fuck out of it, scream and shout and complain. Because when I remember originally reading about that had a far more 1970s Grand Theft Auto vibe to it. I seem to recall reading about this years and years before it came out. In the back of Games Master magazine.
I honestly thought it was like a tribute to Full Throttle, and I thought, I'll get excited for that. And then it turned out to be a pile of old ladies' grunts.
Yeah.
In game form. It was bad.
It was terrible. But, Homefront 2, the game that no one really ever wanted. Because it was odd, because it's an odd... You get a sequel to a game that wasn't, as far as I'm aware, well received critically or commercially.
The first one or the second?
The first one.
Yeah.
So it's still... I mean, there aren't many games these days that if it fails critically, you can still make a sequel as long as it makes money. But if it doesn't make money and it doesn't get the critics talking, how the fuck does that end up with a sequel?
The thing is, you can sort of relate this to movies. I mean, we're both massive fans of Dune.
Yes.
And Dune critically was panned. But Dune to me is one of the best sci-fi movies made. And to a lot of people, it's a cult film, which is amazing. And that's kept it going. It's almost 30, 40 years going now, that movie.
Yep.
And that's still in people's heads as this is the film you judge a lot of sci-fi by.
Yep.
So there are chances when something comes out and it's not received critically well that it still has quality to it.
Because wasn't the
But
multiplayer quite well received?
Rubbish.
Though? But just in general, wasn't the multiplayer not fairly well received? I seem to recall.
I think it was okay. I don't remember people saying how good it was.
We had a shared friend who did, but then he was obsessed for that game like he's obsessed for the new one.
Yeah.
And he's going to love it, whether it turns up and the disc is split in two.
Yeah.
He's obsessed with the game, so...
I've never touched one.
You wouldn't. You don't get infected.
No, the new one tempted me, and then I looked at some of the reviews and just...
But this was it. Some of the reviews were even quite sort of polarising, because you had some people that said this was just terrible, like an embarrassment. How could they have even released it? It's disgusting. And other people that said, do you know what, it's all right. It's not bad as a sort of Far Cry clone, which is kind of what it looked like. And once it's been patched, it'll be fine. I mean, then you go back to that whole, once it's been patched, once they fixed it. I think, why didn't you fucking fix it before it came out?
Get it ready for release.
It's had 4 years.
Yeah, so you think you could get that sorted before you release it, but
I do kind of feel sorry for the guys that made it though, just because of the hand, like the fact it changed studios so often and all this stuff they had to go through to finish the game. And it comes out and it has like glitches and things. It could be down to that, or it could just be down to the bad development of the team that were working on it at the time. But
I mean, I've heard a lot of shit about the PC version, and that's obvious that it's going to try and run on so many different types of PC.
Yeah.
You're going to get issues.
Yeah.
But everybody on the internet wants to moan about something, so they'll jump on that bandwagon and complain about it. And I've seen footage of it, and yes, it's very buggy, but that was a PC version. But I haven't really heard people complaining too much about the console one.
No.
Other than it's just a bit bland.
Yeah.
And it's not
Nothing
it's
special.
not like Half-Life 3.
Yeah.
You know, it's not it's not super duper 10 out of 10 Bioshock or something like that, you know?
I think it's probably one of those things that, a bit like Haze, it would be a perfectly serviceable game, but the second people sort of smell blood in the water, they're just going to... they just really go for it.
Oh, God,
They'll be deliberately looking for errors and issues and, like, really kick up a stink. Whereas if it was just a game that was released with sort of no fanfare and was perfectly okay, you'd sort of forgive the odd little issue. You think, oh, it's just one of those things.
You've had games like that in the past where someone will report a glitch that they have come across in the game, post that on the internet, then everyone just berates the game and says how shit it is.
Yeah.
But, like, for me, if I played through it, I might not come across it.
Yeah.
My gameplay experience is fine.
Yeah, not affected.
Exactly.
The thing, you don't go on the internet to leave a good review, do you, though? So you're never going to find a good review on the internet of a
Well,
game.
no one reads vaguely. Good reviews don't get shouted about, do they?
No.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like any news, just bad news sells, and everybody wants to shout about that. So
Yeah, no one goes on to make a YouTube video about whatever video game it is, and the conclusion is that I thoroughly enjoyed that. It was perfectly entertaining. That sort of middle ground almost kind of thing. If it does nothing, that will get a response. Like if it's completely, I don't know how to feel one way or the other about it, nothing. That gets something. If you say that it was excellent, that gets something. If you think it's terrible, that gets something. But just sort of, yeah, it's fine. I think there's just that sort of, that's the middle ground.
I don't think that, I think that's just it. I think you can't have, it's either terrible or it's the best thing since sliced bread. So, for example, Uncharted 4 has recently come out. Very, very good game.
Yeah.
And deservedly so. But that's had, film studio money thrown at it.
Yeah.
And hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people working on it. And quality all over it.
Well, delayed 3 times?
Yeah, still delayed 3 times, but came out...
To ensure that the quality was there.
Better delayed than come out buggy.
Yeah, and I knew that.
Do think it's the best of the whole series. And that got praised, but it's still kind of... People have gone, yeah, that's brilliant, it's excellent, but it's got nowhere near as much sort of news or reviews as something like Homefront being bad has.
I think what was interesting, particularly about Uncharted, was when it first came out, all the reviews came out initially. There was all that controversy about the... is it the New York Post?
Yeah.
New York Post review / not review, where Metacritic had arbitrarily assigned it a 4 out of 10. Whereas previously, prior to that, all the reviews had been sort of 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, or the equivalent of.
Yeah.
And Video Gamer had given it 8 out of 10. And that was at the time the lowest score that it had been assigned. And everyone went fucking bananas. How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? 8 out of 10. This is a 9 out of 10. This is a 10 out of 10. This is the best thing ever. Forgetting, of course, that reviews are entirely subjective.
Yeah.
You know, it is the reviewer's opinion of the game. And he or she has to take it on what they have experienced during that point. After all that had sort of settled down, died down, and people sort of put their knickers back on, some more reviews came out, and I was seeing more sort of 7.5 out of 10s for it, saying, yes, it's very, very good, but let's not forget that it's not necessarily any really better than the ones that have come before. It's doing the same thing.
You see past the hype.
Yeah. And you look at it really, really objectively at this point.
Yeah. And
go, but it's essentially like the guy that gave it or didn't give it 4 out of 10. They've just done the same game, which is the first game, 4 times.
Yeah.
But then ultimately most sequels are that.
Yeah.
Really, by and large.
You could say that they've done it on the fact that that's a formula that works, though. And people enjoy that. So there's a premise there to repeat that formula rather than just rinse and repeat in terms of, it's the same fucking game, but it's just set in a different country.
Yeah.
And technically that's exactly what it is. It's still got the same characters, same cast, same actors, same everything. But there is an underlying quality that just oozes through it. Whereas with Homefront... See, people would have asked for an Uncharted 4. No one asked for a Homefront 2.
No.
That's the thing.
And no one would have cared if it hadn't come out.
Is it a direct sequel then?
What, Homefront 2?
Yeah.
No.
But it's not called Homefront 2 though, is it, the new one?
It's called Revolution.
The
Yeah,
Revolution. Does it tie into the last ones? Or
The
is
same...
It just...
The Korean... It's basically doing this first game again, but they've just
Is it
got
just
it on
like
a bigger
reinventing
scale.
it?
Yeah. So the Koreans basically... The premise is... Koreans sell us their tech. It's the best tech in the world. It's better than anything that anyone can make anywhere, and we love it. So we buy it all because it's amazing. Phones, tablets, computers, the lot. They also happen to sell army tech, so they make the best guns, weapons, planes, ships, aircraft carriers, whatever. So they sell it to all the armies. Problem is, at one point they turn a little switch,
like
which
switch,
basically kills everything in the world that's their tech. And the whole world's bought their tech. So we're now in this kind of blackout. And then they invade because they can't be fought back.
Yeah.
That's the premise of the story.
It's quite
it was on a
interesting sense.
Yeah,
of
it's
idea,
a lot better
yeah.
story than the first one was,
Yeah.
which is the Koreans are taking over a small town.
Well, it was like Red Dawn.
Yeah, I was going to say that was the exact same
that's
premise.
pretty
of
much
that.
it.
Yeah.
But at least they put a little bit more effort into the story. But the protagonists, the fucking acting is dreadful. There's nothing good about it.
It's just very generic across the board, isn't it?
It
really?
seems like a remake of
Nothing
the first
special.
one on a grander scale, and no one asked for that. Apart from Crytek, they saw something there. God knows what they saw there.
Well,
So much so that it cost them closing down.
so we're unlikely to see Homefront 3.
I wouldn't.
The
I wouldn't say
Tripolution.
that.
Well, they did Crisis 3, didn't they? And no one asked for that.
No.
So, I don't know. Maybe they've already started work on it down
we'll never
Buster
see it.
Studios. I feel sorry because someone, you want the UK to have studios that stand out and be. You don't just want it to be, Naughty Dog's the best studio in the world all the time. Valve's the best studio in the world all the time.
Well, we've got...
You want some quality. I know we've got like GTA,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Rockstar,
Yeah.
but you want more.
Rocksteady and Rockstar.
2K.
Really are.
You want them to be. You want there to be more pride in the game development world in the UK.
Yeah.
This doesn't help it.
No, I agree.
This doesn't help it.
Well,
Anyway,
hopefully we'll still see Time Splitters 3 at some point.
Yeah.
That'd be nice. Or
Could
Time
do with
Splitters
it.
4. Was it 3 or 4? No,
Or a remaster collection. I think
I
that
only
was
remember
4,
1 and 2.
I
I
thought
don't
that was
remember
number 4.
a
maybe it wasn't 3. No, it's definitely not. I'm just trying to think. The first one was definitely PS2 only.
I remember playing a PS2 version.
Yeah.
Loving it.
And I think maybe it was just Time Splitters 2. And
I think
then we all
when I
went
played
into
it, I
3.
didn't have a memory card, so I just did the same level over and over again.
Yeah, I
That's
did
it.
that as
I didn't have a memory card. To see how long I could go, and that was it. I think
No, they did Time Splitters 2. I definitely remember that.
Yeah.
So I thought the third one did come out on that at the Xbox. I must be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm old. I'm still thinking of Val Kilmer.
come on then.
Wearing a tight-fitting pair of jeans. I think it's jeans. I'll go and find out.
you can watch
I'll
it quickly.
go back.
It's going to take 20 minutes.
That's right. If you could just leave,
Yeah.
put your fingers in your ears.
Come on in the hocks of an old 80s actress.
There we go.
Give us something.
I suppose the most interesting one of all of these, and I suppose this is not necessarily deception, but something that is very dear to my heart and Harry's as well. I don't know about you, Louis. Resident Evil. How do you
Not interested in Resident Evil games.
Oh.
get the fuck out there?
I know. Shoot me down. I bought Revelations 2. I bought
okay.
that just mainly for the purpose of it being a split-screen co-op game.
Okay.
Yes, which it was. Yes.
And I did that with a mate for about an hour. Mm-hmm. And it was, I think, because it was a story game, it's something we'd have both had to do for a long time together.
Yeah.
Which we just didn't do. And then I played it again on my own. Mm-hmm. And got fit. I did a good 4 hours, and I was just like, I didn't enjoy it. I think it was because it was a remaster. I thought I could be playing something else, and it was just never a series I really opened up to. I never
Fair enough.
Let myself.
And I suppose given that comes so late in the sort of story process,
Yeah, I had
for
no
you,
idea
you
what
have
was going
no
on.
tie to the characters or the
No,
situation
nothing
or
at
anything
all.
like that, so it would have been bland nothingness to you.
Literally a noob of Resident Evil.
Fair enough. Okay, but you are aware that it is
I
an
know it's
important
important. Yeah,
series.
I know a lot of people have a lot of love for that game.
So Resident Evil
Games.
1, 2 and 3 come out, very well received, critically, commercially, and it comes time to the inevitable fourth episode. And this goes through, which I didn't realise, it went through 4 different versions before they nailed what it ultimately became, which radically changed, for good or for ill, the nature of how the Resident Evil games got played. Because originally the first 3 were sort of tank controlled.
Yeah.
By and large, well, they all were tank controlled. The Resident Evil Code Veronica switched it up slightly, so it was still sort of tank controls, but it did have, I don't know what the word is.
It would always sort of be in an area within the house, the part of
Yeah.
the house you're in, but sometimes
you
it
would-
would occasionally follow you and stuff.
Yeah, you would move through the space, or the space would move around you as well, as
Yeah.
opposed to just being a sort of static, almost like a static screen. But essentially it was the same. And then the Resident Evil 4, which we all know and arguably love, is when it turned into the sort of over-the-shoulder third-person shooter. It turned more into a shooter than a sort of survival horror game.
I'm probably going to sound like an idiot.
Yeah.
Is Resident Evil Pyramid Head or is that Silent Hills?
That's
That was
Silent Hill.
Silent Hill.
Okay, right. I'm thinking of a different series. That's fine.
The one you may be thinking of, the closest they have,
The
I
Chainsaw Guy?
suppose, is Dr. Salvador.
Yeah,
the
I know
Chainsaw
him. I've
Guy.
seen multiple videos of him brutally
Yeah.
decapitating people. Yeah.
So, yeah, that would be that. But that was Resident Evil 4, which was incredibly, incredibly well received. I don't know whether it rejuvenated sales of the series or I think it probably introduced a lot more people to the Resident Evil series than it had done previously. It was a lot easier to control. Graphically
Yeah.
at the time, it was absolutely
It
astounding.
looked really good.
I remember importing this for the GameCube, an American. It was the first time I'd ever bought an imported game, so I was desperate to get my hands on this absolutely as soon as possible. And it didn't disappoint. It was also one of the first games that introduced interactive cutscenes.
Oh god, yeah.
Which was something that no one had ever done before. So instead of you just putting the controller down thinking, oh, that's fine, I'll just watch this after a particularly tense boss fight or whatever it might be, you'd suddenly have to hammer the A button or whatever it might be. So there was always that sort of sense of tension. But an amazing, amazing game. However, it was nothing like I was expecting. The first footage or first screenshots I ever saw of Resident Evil 4 had, I think it was still Leon, but he was moving through an airship.
Okay.
Or what it looked like an airship. And there was this very sort of clean industrial design to it. And then there were also some shots of a really creepy, really properly creepy house. And it was far more horror themed than just sort of straight survival horror. Because the original house, the original mansion was just a mansion.
Yeah.
And there were zombies in it, but it didn't look particularly sort of creepy necessarily. Whereas this one had gone out of its way to make it look really, really sort of creepy, far more Silent Hillsian in its approach. And I seem to recall the enemy, who I can't think of his name, was far more supernatural in his design and his just in his being, just in general. I seem to recall there was something like he would only appear from the shadows, and he had something to do with scissors, and there was far more sort of creepy, dead-eyed doll type sort of shit. Very much more Silent Hills than Resident Evil. Anyway, that's sort of beside the point. One of the...
Well, hang on, what turned up? Because you said that that's what you'd seen in terms of its premise and its kind of preamble and its sort of aesthetic before it was released, and then what happened after just 4 years of development? Or whatever
it just got delayed and delayed and delayed until eventually the Resident Evil 4 that did come out started sort of appearing. So they just kept changing because they just couldn't figure out what to do with it.
But what was wrong with the idea of the haunted house and the airship?
I don't know. Honestly don't know. I can't remember. I have read it in the past, but it has escaped me now. I just don't think they could make it work, or they thought it was too close to Silent Hill, perhaps. And given that Silent Hill had sort of come after Resident Evil, that they thought that would be just
copycat.
A step too far, for them to copy off the back of someone that arguably sort of copied from them to a degree.
But ironically, you weren't disappointed.
I love the idea of the airship. For some reason, there's something about airships I just fucking love. Almost anything that has an airship. For some reason, I just really love that.
Yeah.
But that disappeared. I did something about the aesthetic and the way it looked. Now, I love Resident Evil 4 the way it is.
Yeah.
I absolutely fucking adore that game. So I was not disappointed in that, but I think the most interesting thing that ever came out of that, which is something that is fairly well known, is that one failed attempt at Resident Evil 4 spawned an entire new franchise, which is Devil May Cry. So one of the attempts at it made the game too, I think at the time they thought it was too action orientated.
Yeah.
And so it was a little bit too quick and it didn't feel like Resident Evil in any way, shape or form. Now certainly Resident Evil 4 is still fairly action orientated, far more than the previous iterations had been, but this was a step too far. However, the head honchos at Capcom thought that this was too good to just completely abandon. And so they switched it, altered it, invented a new character, invented a new setting, and turned it into Devil May Cry. I'm not aware of any other sort of...
I know one.
What failed attempt at a game that turned into something else?
Well, it did the same thing that you've just suggested, but I don't think it was anywhere near as successful as Devil May Cry.
Okay, go on.
Because there was one. It was Metal Gear Rising, which basically went from your typical Metal Gear game set in that world to then making it almost like a super fast Devil May Cry clone. But it wasn't a success, whereas Devil May Cry was a success.
Oh, I see. It spawned its own franchise properly.
Yeah, because I believe in its development, you wouldn't really expect people making a Metal Gear game to do what they did in Metal Gear Rising, which was kind of like a speed shooter.
Yeah, it was.
Like a hack and slash thing.
Yeah.
Which wasn't your typical Metal Gear. But
it's far more...
Devil May Cry was a success, whereas Metal Gear Rising, I don't think... People liked it, but I don't think it was a success.
But here's the thing that I didn't know, and I don't know at what point this got scrapped fairly early on. Bonus points for anyone that can tell me what Dante's original name was going to be.
Steve.
Phyllis Buckets.
Phyllis Buckets, Steve,
The fact you laughed at it makes it sound like it's something stupid.
Clarence
Would it be something,
Saddles.
I don't know, common? Is it like just a really generic...
You've got very close, to
Really,
be honest,
with
with
Steve?
it's that type of thing.
It's just stupid.
Is it
It's not so stupid,
Nick?
it's just...
Nick,
No, but
Louis.
just the manner. Well,
Max.
Max, no.
Max Powers, something like that.
No, Tony.
Tony.
Just
Wow.
generic, yeah.
It's just very, very, very
Just
generic.
sounds like a normal guy.
Right, Tony and his...
Just a standard geezer. Go
just
down to the
gonna rock
pub
up.
Tuesday evening.
It's alright, Tony's here to sort out these demons.
Two
He'll be
sides, aren't
alright.
there? You're either a mafia boss or you're just Tony down the pub playing darts.
Yeah, that's it. There's no in between.
Yeah.
Tony the mechanic.
Exactly, Tony the lawnmower man. That's it. You've got him, or you've got King of the Mafia.
Pick one. They're our saviour now.
He's either got a wrench or a Tommy gun.
Well, they both probably have wrenches, but one's working and the other one's they're probably both working. But one's... Where the fuck am I going with that?
One will just suck through his teeth and say, don't like the look of that. That's,
Yeah. I said cannoli. And the other one's like... 2 weeks out.
Where do you want it by? I
I
don't know. Yeah, I don't like the look of those tyres. Look a bit flat.
You probably say exactly the same thing. And they both suck through their teeth. You say one's going to kill one and the other one's going to cut your lawn. Anyway.
And then fleece you.
Tony
Anyway.
was he a cop?
I don't know.
In Resident Evil 4?
There was no Tony in Resident Evil 4 at all.
The guy who's in it, I don't know because I haven't played it. I don't care about Resident Evil 4.
No, this Dante's original.
Oh, sorry,
name.
Devil May Cry, sorry. So, yeah. Forget I even said about cops.
So nothing to do with cops in any way, shape or form.
Put that trumpet sound on again. Just
We'll do that.
Cool.
There you go. So that's my first one. But as far as I know, yes, like you. Well, I don't think there's any other game.
But that was like you said, that was a success.
But I just think it's interesting that it was deceptive in the sense that the original design of Resident Evil 4, which people are being sold on, that it's going to be again back to the haunted house, because you have to think that the original Resident Evil, you were essentially trapped in a house.
Yeah.
Then the second one brought you out into Raccoon City, as did the third, and then Code Veronica had you in a prison, and then you were on an island essentially. So it's far more open.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think perhaps they had thought that by the time you get to the fourth one, Resident Evil 4, so the fifth game in the series technically, they were going back into a confined space. And that would also feel like a bit of a step back.
Yeah.
And they wanted to open it out. Now, Resident Evil 4 is far more open in that respect. It's you traversing through a large amount of space. You are going into houses at some point, but you go through a village and through a forest and then into some enormous castle. But there's a lot more ground covered. And perhaps being trapped once again in a mansion. Just wasn't the right move for them, and that's sort
but
of
it's still
where we
sold,
ended up.
which was good.
But yes, it was not a failure. Both huge. The original Devil May Cry, massive success.
Yeah.
And Resident Evil 4, huge success. I mean, arguably both still sort of groundbreaking in that respect.
Yeah.
Because I can't remember the name of the guy that did Devil May Cry, but I think it was the same chap. What do you think, Tony? That's it. Yeah, Tony Sparrow. He went on to do, I believe, Beautiful Joe,
Oh, really?
which might not have come about without. I think Bayonetta as well.
I thought you did
That
the
wouldn't
Wonderful
surprise me.
101.
And I think the Wonderful 101, but I think he had a hand in Bayonetta, if you'll pardon the.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it.
There we are. Anyway, back to Bill Kilmer. Take my mind off 7 foot leggy brunettes.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Crack on.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Yeah. Just move on.
Hold on, nothing to see here. Ignore the boner.
Jesus. The table's lifting.
Yep, go, just pick your drinks up. Just pick your drinks up. Careful.
Are you telling yourself that?
Easy.
No one put their cup down too soon.
Just think of Goldie Corn.
Vibrations, mate.
There you go, that's better. That's fine.
You done? You good?
Go and open the freezer.
That's right, yeah, that'll do me.
He's got a pillow on his lap for the rest of this now.
Stand by the freezer for a bit.
Anyway, back to video games. One that I thought about whilst looking up stuff for this was, in a way, a disappointment because it's a franchise that me and my older brother grew up playing quite a lot back on the PlayStation 1 and then on the PlayStation 2. And these were the Legacy of Kain games. Absolutely loved them when we were younger. Honestly, I watched my brother play through them just because when I was younger I was bad at games, so it was a way for us to both enjoy it still. And so
Was this PS1?
PS1 was Legacy of Kain.
Yep.
Then there was Legacy of Kain Defiance on PS2.
Right.
And then I'm sure there was another one, but I can't remember the name of it. Anyway,
Legacy of Tony.
that was like a side one that kind
Okay.
of just slipped out and they didn't really want to acknowledge it. It wasn't very good. It was like a car mechanic simulator, but with vampires.
They looked at it and went, ooh.
Anyway, yeah, so Legacy of Kain, Dead Sun, started development in 2009, got cancelled in 2012,
Right.
and they didn't even, reveal that it was being made, essentially. So no one knew about it
Okay.
until information came out, I want to say last year, was when I heard about it, or the year before, that it was a new Legacy of Kain game that was in development, but just never quite became what they wanted it to be. The only element of it that was done by another company was a multiplayer component. So what this, I imagine, was going to be was something that was released alongside with it, but wasn't necessarily linked with the game itself. It was like just its own kind of thing.
Okay.
And so the guys that were working on the single player were Climax Studios, and the guys working on the multiplayer were Psyonix, which Psyonix are the guys behind Rocket League.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So anyway, got cancelled in 2012, so no one even knew about it. It would have been cool just because I like the Legacy of Kain games. But then what came out of the wreckage, let's say, was a PC game called Nosgoth, which...
Oh, that's another name.
Yeah, it's a free-to-play, third-person multiplayer game in which one side plays vampire hunters, and the side plays as vampires, each with unique classes and things with different weapons and skills. So this came out like start of last year.
Produced by the same people?
Produced by Psyonix,
Okay.
and then published by Square Enix.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep. But unfortunately, it's being shut down at the end of this month.
Well, just not enough cash in the servers and all that
I
stuff.
guess so. I think it was just one of those ones that had a nice amount of people jump on it as soon as it entered early access beta on Steam. And then other things just came out that kind of made people forget about it. And so no one really went back to it.
Forgive my ignorance, but this is not the one with the rat people in it, is it? Or am I thinking of something
No,
else?
you're thinking of...
Like a first-person one.
Yeah, Warhammer Vermilion.
Oh,
think
yeah,
that one
yeah,
is.
that was it. Sorry, I kept getting those two confused.
Yeah, I can see what you mean though. Like aesthetically, they do look very similar.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nosgoth is just being closed down. It was one of those ones I was always very interested to try, but because PCs are a big crock of shit in terms of trying to play a game on them, I can play it.
What happened to the other part of the studio, or the other studio that was doing the single player?
I guess they just moved on to another project, were assigned to do something else, and then...
They were politely asked by Tony the Pony Bellucci
Come round.
if they would,
Could you come round the back of the?
they would kindly stop
alleyway.
producing this, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going to introduce you to this.
Could you just come and have a look at my cement mixer for a moment, please? Don't move.
Do you think this cement is set or not? I need your opinion.
Does it smell good to you? Does it smell
Yeah,
right?
you smell it.
Could you just
Make sure you smell Mr. Fry at the back. Get your head deep in there.
just sign it? Sign it with your head.
Can you clean this aquarium from the inside? Yeah, well, that's a shame because I had heard of Nosgoth, but Rocket League is a bit of a success for them, and so at least that's something.
Yeah, one of the studios ended up getting something good
Okay.
at the end of it,
Brilliant,
I
yeah.
guess.
So that's pretty good for them, but not for you getting the Dead Sun.
It looked really different to previous ones as well, because in the older games, it was all just kind of like sections you would go to. They're all fairly big, and then you just do what you needed to do, get a key to unlock the next area and progress that way, whereas this was like completely open world.
Yeah.
And the other games were all fairly dark looking, greys, like moss greens, that kind of stuff. Everything was earthy looking, whereas this, everything looked really vibrant. But I guess that's probably part of the Dead Sun. Something must have happened at some point to just turn everything to darkness, because I think this may have been a bit of a prequel to the previous ones, but I don't know. Just because there was no information released until recently, where there was a small amount of alpha footage of it. And that's about it.
I've never played the Legacy of Kain game, but
I remember I played one briefly. I had a couple of friends, and I think I was at university at the time. I think that was sort of my introduction to the PlayStation 1. A couple of friends absolutely loved that
Yeah.
series, really loved that series.
Yeah.
And I think it was one of those ones that we were surprised about when we were talking about, it might have been franchises.
we did
or
talk
something.
about it before.
And we were talking about the fact it was one of those things that we were sort of surprised that, given that it was sort of well received critically and commercially, we had not seen a new gen
Yeah.
sequel to it at some point, and then apparently they were working on one,
Yeah.
and it just disappeared. And there it is. Louis?
Right, so Assassin's Creed, first ever game I had on 360 was Brotherhood.
Yep.
Amazing.
Amazing,
Yeah, it's really
amazing. I think it's still up there with one of the best games I've played. And then, as soon as I finished that, I go, Mom, pick me up all these games, got all the ones that were out at the time. I think it was just 2 and 3 were out at the time. 2 and
One.
1, 2, and the one was there one before Brotherhood?
Brotherhood was the third, essentially.
Yeah.
So
And then
1, 2,
Revelations.
Brotherhood, Revelations.
Right, so
3.
Revelations not out at the time. I picked up the other two, loved them as well.
Uh-huh.
Played Revelations, loved it, and then it was 3,
Yep.
which I skipped right over.
Yeah.
It wasn't very good.
I know, apparently I'm not missing out on much with number 3.
No.
I got fucked over by that one.
And then same again with Black Flag, I regretfully skipped over.
Why?
That is the best
Exactly, I didn't know at the time it was the best one. I was really sceptical after the Heartbreak of 3, which I played for about 10 minutes and hated. I played for about 10 minutes and hated it. I was like, this is so different, I hate change, take me back. It just give me a 360 and a Brotherhood and all that kind of stuff. And this Connor, this really boring, dull guy, just skips right over it. Assassin's Creed Black Flag, I have now played, just to clear it, I've played it now, I've loved
So
it.
I can call off Tony the pony.
There you go. You can tell him to stay at home.
Yeah.
And then Unity, right, onto the actual talk point. First Assassin's Creed,
Long story short.
long story short, picked up my PS4. Unity was, I think it went out of the time, really close. Picked it up anyway. Played it 2 hours, turned it off. That was pretty boring.
2 hours.
Pretty boring. And then, it's an Assassin's Creed game. They're slow going ish. I'll pick it up and I'll go again. And then I just got through and kept with this mentality, this is going to get better. This is going to get better. And then
It didn't get better.
it never, ever, ever got better. And it just always just disappointed me. It was boring. There was no fun bits. Nothing stood out to me. And nothing made me want to go back and do it. Nothing remember the Da Vinci missions in one of them? There's nothing like that really made me want to go, I want to go explore this bit.
I think part of the problem initially with the Assassin's Creed games, as we discussed in the franchise episode, was that it suffers from that situation which they should implement, is that right at the beginning of the game, it should give you an option. Have you played an Assassin's Creed game before?
Yeah.
Yes. Then you will now just start the game. And if you say no, you can then do that long, boring ass tutorial missions, which take a long time.
They
And
really
that's when
do.
you just think, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Have a little brief reminder if need be, but otherwise just crack straight on with the game.
Bugs as well. Just walking through a door and you're out the map. You're falling constantly with what's his name screaming. Just repeat, and then.
I was going to say, I'm going through them all again. I don't know why. Nothing better out there at the moment. So I'm going through them all again, and
Corleone.
I've got to play through 3 because I never finished it, so I want to finish it. And then Unity, but I never played it, and I heard so much about it, and I just hoped that the bugs were a PC thing and not a console thing.
You got a few on console.
There were a few.
I
Yeah,
had
definitely.
the
Lack
issue.
of face.
No,
I thought that was only PC, the face thing.
Yeah.
I think
thought.
upon release, I think that did happen on console.
Well, there were 6
so.
patches for this thing.
Yeah, they're all hefty ones as
Yes,
well.
they're
Yeah.
quite chunky.
But the only issue I ever came across on console was just if I'm trying to walk into a crowded area and I just see pedestrians essentially morphing into each other, but they didn't have their own kind of space and just walk past each other. They just walk into someone and stuff like that. And people just popping out of nowhere.
For such a lively crowd, it was so dull as well.
Yeah.
It always seemed like an odd choice, given it felt like a step back because you you went from the freedom of a large part of the Americas, certainly in number 3, to essentially the Caribbean in 4, replete with numerous islands and sailing on the ship, to being in landlocked gay Paris.
Yeah, God knows why they got rid of the
So for
sailing.
the Bastille Day.
Well, I being a fan of the series, I wasn't too worried about them going back to Paris because, yes, a lot of people have complained, and yes, we've talked about it before, saying that a lot of people hated the sailing in Black Flag, and we talked about the fact that I was saying that I really loved it, but I thought it was one of the best bits, but people just couldn't get it, and they didn't think it was Assassin's Creed, and they wanted it to be on land again. Fair enough, if you've been through all the series and then suddenly you're sailing in a sailing simulator, then maybe you got a point. I thought Paris, wow, beautiful city, loads of rooftops, could be amazing. But and from what I hear, after a lot of patches, they got it working really well with the parkour after several hours and hours and hours of training how to jump when you knew how to jump because you've played 4 bloody games before. They made you do that. But the thing I heard was what you said was it's criminal if you create this world and you put all this lore and ethos into the world that's Assassin's Creed and its history, and then you just make it dull.
Yeah.
And you promise the world and you give us dullness. So
Turd everywhere.
yeah, I mean, patches will fix things and people will forgive stuff, especially if they're into the series and it will come out. But it's unforgivable to be dull and boring with the game.
It's not a game that should be an annual release. It's too big. There's too much they need to do with it.
It's funny you say that because they took your advice. Because I mean, we've got a 2-year break between this one and Kingdoms or whatever it's called. I think it's Kingdoms
At least.
Well, you say that, but Chronicles essentially. I mean, that's not a big one. But that probably took months to make. But
they did actually release a good one on mobile phones. Actually,
it's because they're just really milking it.
It's pretty much Ezio again.
Okay.
And it's the whole of Rome. Got loads of really good reviews. I wish I could remember what it was, but it's literally like playing Brotherhood again or playing Assassin's Creed 2. There's no problem there. But
back to Italy, you say?
Yeah, it's Rome. But, like you say, you've got no excuse for something like Unity coming out, and with all its faults, it can't be boring, or if they can't get past boring, then they shouldn't have made it.
I think the biggest thing they kind of focused on with Unity was just the co-op element of it. So it's like, play with your mates, do all this, do all that. But if I'm playing an Assassin's Creed game, as much as I loved the multiplayer of Brotherhood and 4, I just absolutely sunk hours and hours into that. The co-op side of it is not something I want. If I want to play an Assassin's Creed story, I want to play it on my own so I can invest in the characters and what's going on. Whereas this, it was a case of I'd progress through the story, get to an area, and it's like, these are suddenly level whatever enemies. And I'm like, leveled enemies now? Okay. So now I need to get better gear. So I can get better gear by doing the co-op missions, which I fucking hate, or I can buy their Helix credits in-game currency to get all the best gear, which is another thing I don't fucking want to do.
Win,
Was it you who told me they were compulsory, the co-op mission?
No, they're not compulsory.
Oh, okay, because
I thought they were. That's what it took me
saying
off.
It was compulsory.
No. There are you can do like all of the story on your own, but there are certain side missions that it says you'll need to be with other people to do these, which they don't add anything to story, but it's just to get you better gear that you might need to progress further.
Yeah.
So it's just that kind of, when I got to the point when my gear was not good enough, and there were certain missions, co-op missions I'd have to do to get upgrades, I just tuned out and I couldn't care for that game anymore.
Or you could throw us a couple of quid.
Yeah.
And we'll let you skip the level.
Yeah.
So I remember that being one of the big things people went on about in reviews, how, or even just before it's released, they were like, apparently there's going to be in-game currency, then it comes out.
Ubisoft are just suckers for that, though, aren't they? Just make money out of anything they can.
Yeah, they certainly do.
Arno was one of the biggest problems for me.
He was just boring.
Same with Connor.
Connor is so dull, isn't he?
Literally the most boring character. I mean, he doesn't do anything, Arno.
But I thought,
if he's more boring than Connor, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it.
Connor was boring.
Fucking dull.
But to me, he still had like an interesting story to him, whereas Arno...
Nothing.
I got into the game, played for like 3 hours, and I was like, who the fuck's this guy?
He's not really an assassin either,
why is he so angry? I don't know. And I couldn't fucking care.
I think you'd have more fun throwing slices of bread at my head than playing as Connor.
Well, that's pretty fun anyway.
Exactly.
So we'll just have a quick interlude. We'll put this to the test.
And if... that's the litmus test, then that says everything you need to know about that. So, fucking hell.
So for the next game, do they need to contact you so they can get a team to play the game? Then get the team to throw slice of bread at your head and see which one's more fun, to know what they need to change?
Well, if it's not funner, if their game's not more fun than slices of wholemeal going at my face, then they've obviously got problems in their production of their game.
I don't know where it went
I'm really dreading playing this now because I want to do the whole lot.
I've tried to tell you not to get it.
What about Rogue? You're going to do Rogue as well?
Yeah, I'm kind of halfway through Rogue, and that sort of made me think, you know what, I want to go back and play them all again. So I started again. I'm halfway through Brotherhood now. I haven't got that far to go in Brotherhood. Then I'll do Revelations, then I'll do 3, and then, oh my God, I've got to do 3. Then I'll have Black Flag, which I might skip because I've played that 3 times now.
Yeah.
So I might just go straight on to Unity. Oh dear.
I think you're going to waste
Brotherhood
that time,
3 straight into Unity. I think I'm just going to go and let people throw bread at me. That'll be more fun. You know. Anyway.
There you go, that's Unity.
Yeah. You haven't sold it.
Didn't really shit, yeah.
And neither did they. Ubisoft.
I think that was when the rot had certainly set in with that one.
I'm glad they're taking
because they sort of redeemed it with the reception of 3. They redeemed it with Black Flag, and then they fluffed it with Unity. Syndicate was not nothing more
of course,
than
it was
special.
just okay.
But it was just Assassin's Creed
Yeah.
2014 or whatever the hell it came
Until
out.
you mentioned it, I'd completely forgot about Syndicate. We've been talking about
15.
It
Assassin's
is
Creed,
completely
and
forgettable.
it's just a nothing game. It's nothing special.
I wanted to like that. It was just okay. God damn it, Assassin's Creed.
So they're doing the right thing by taking a year of. I
waiting
wouldn't
for
be
them just to
surprised. I
remaster
suspect
it.
they just reboot it. So
Okay, yeah.
I'm still of the mindset that I think Assassin's Creed 2 is the best sequel because it lived up to, or it delivered on all the promises, all the expectations that the first one had.
I think
And
Brotherhood.
the second one is such a good game. But I mean, Brotherhood is a good game, but that didn't improve hugely on 2, which
No.
was already a very good game.
All
Whereas-
it was for me was the calling in your own assassins. I love that.
Sure, that
yeah.
was great. But what I mean is the first game was one of those. It was rinse, repeat for everything.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
either
really.
sat on
Okay,
in
yeah.
between two people, or you just sort of
Haystack.
doing that, and then you just sort of walked between people. That everyone else was wearing robes, and that was more or less it.
Yeah.
You used to eavesdrop on people,
Yeah.
and then you'd climb up shit and stab people in the head,
Yeah.
Yep.
and then hide in the occasional haystack,
Yeah.
and then collect flags if you were really boring.
If
And
you're
that
a
was it.
completionist, yeah.
If you're a completionist. And that was sort of it. And this 2 sort of opened it up a little bit, gave you some things to do. You had a house which you could sort of build up and you could find different types of treasures and
Yeah.
up your weapons. And it was just, there was more to do. I
Up
think it
your
just-
weapons.
What was
Up,
the
up
one?
your weapons.
Is that another carry-on move?
It was the sequel to Up Pompeii.
Up your weapons. That was it, yeah.
Up your weapons, yeah.
What was the one with the tower defense inverted
Brotherhood.
commas?
That was, I thought that was Revelations.
No, Brotherhood has it in.
That
You
was-
sure?
Oh, I might be wrong.
I think it's the third one. 'Cause
I'll
I think,
find out.
I think they said that was a step too far when you had the tower defense stuff.
Yeah, I think.
I think it was
it was.
I
Revelations.
think I just tried that for like one thing when I guess you had to, like the
Yes,
introduction.
you
I mean, it was
and
cool
like,
that they
no, I
added
don't
something
care.
else in, but it was another.
But it was just
thing-
adding something
it was
for the
just-
sake of adding something, I think. at
Yeah,
that point.
filler.
Yeah.
Oh,
read-
no, yeah, it was towers. Just I was thinking of towers. It's towers. That's Ubisoft's favourite thing.
Yeah.
Where's
Oh,
the
God,
tower?
yeah.
We've got to put a tower there. Climb the
Oh,
tower.
yeah.
Break the tower. Do something
Far
with the tower.
Cry.
Yeah.
The crew.
Yeah, the
Warriors.
crew.
I think that's the biggest joke, that a racing game has towers in it that you have to go.
But it was Ubisoft. I think they had to, either ironically or.
I think they just have a big old cob on for big, enormous
Towers. Yeah.
towers erected everywhere that they have to just smash the tower. Oh, it's so good. Is that racist?
I don't know. I suppose it depends on what accent we think it is.
What is it? I could just do mock European.
Was that not what that was?
It was meant to be the Dordogne.
Oh, was it specifically?
Yeah,
No.
but you have to listen out for the little subtleties.
Fair enough.
Anyway, yeah, Unity. What a disaster.
3 out of 10.
3 out of 10 is generous. Come on then.
That's your turn.
Is it me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. A game that I really wanted. I'm going to talk about that, Gotham by Gaslight.
Mm.
Now, this was a Batman title, and it was kind of, imagine Sherlock Holmes meets Batman, but obviously you've got the gadgets of Batman set in a sort of Victorian steampunk world. Well, he was probably going to be steampunk with all his gadgets, because that's
Yeah.
how they could get around it. There was some test footage shown for this, like some alpha footage that was just showing him going around, and he was all kind of
Just the movement of the cape.
yeah,
essentially.
cloak, cape type thing, and the sort of he had the kind of goggles on for his mask, but he also had like a highwayman's hat
Yeah,
that
the sort of
flicked up the
tricorn-
little tricorner
tricorn
ears to
hat.
give him
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Batman look, and I thought that's really cool.
Yeah.
And it had that Victorian look, gaslight everywhere, foggy streets, think
Jack the
Sweeney
Ripper
Todd
type. Yeah, yeah.
thing, that kind of world. But the footage just showed him going around, and it showed the lighting off, and it showed mainly the movement of the cloth to make it, see what the Batman looked like in that kind of Victorian era. But it had a steampunk feel to it, and I recently saw some pictures of, there was a lady who worked on the team. She was designing the interface look, and showed off lots of interface images of what you'd get when you were just starting the game, setting up the game, loading your saves and stuff like that. The usual. This was called Day One Studios, the company that made this, or were going to make this. And yeah, it was all very, very steampunk. And you kind of, very much similar to Syndicate, where you see the clockwork sort of cogs and wheels and all that function going on behind the background. And then obviously there's Assassin's Creed Syndicate logos laying over the top of it. And it's all going on in the background. Very industrial. It had that kind of feel to it. But yeah, there wasn't much more known about that other than this test footage, and then recently this woman releasing her concept art screens and her kind of approved art screens of what the interface might have looked like, which looked pretty good. It kind of ticked all the boxes, but why that didn't get made, I don't know.
I'm assuming it would have had something to do with the fact that it was confused people in the sense that at this point you would already have had the Arkham series. And I don't know that you would necessarily want two Batman franchises who are running simultaneously with each other.
When was this supposed to be released?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I think it was quite a while ago, but again, before Arkham Asylum had been made.
Oh, really?
Oh, was it? Oh, I thought this
I
was.
believe so.
I thought it was post Arkham Asylum.
I think it was in production before that, but it
Okay.
never got released. But it was going to come out around the same time. Didn't you tell me it was based on a comic series?
There was a series of comics that DC produced called Elseworlds, which was essentially transplanting DC characters just into other times and other situations. So it would have been posited in this case that, what if Bruce Wayne existed in sort of Victorian London
Yeah.
as opposed to, modern Gotham.
Yeah.
The best one I
sure
ever
it
read
got
of
made,
the
but it was good.
Elseworld series, just as an aside, just because it's interesting, it was called Speeding Bullet, which I think I've told the pair of you about before, but Nick may not know about it. And the idea with this one, instead of the Wayne family giving birth to Bruce, they happen upon Kal-El instead. And so Superman is brought up sort of as Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And when his parents get sort of shot, that's when his sort of emotions go just crazy, and that's when all his powers come out. So it's Batman, but it's actually Superman at the same
that sounds
time.
quite good.
That's brilliant. Really, that's a really interesting story. But that's as an aside. I was sort of, disappointed because I think any game that's sort of steampunky Victorian just ticks all my boxes, floats all my boats. Gets my Valkyrie now raging. I get a raging volleyball on for that sort of game.
Well, that's all I know about it. There was test footage, there were these screens, these concept screens, and then there was a reluctant sigh of the complete internet as they went, oh, I would have quite liked that.
Yeah.
And then you wonder, that's probably what it is. Tony came around and went, can't make that.
Can't do that.
Can't make that. And then everybody sighed and wondered, why didn't you make that? That would have been really good.
But I think because you have to look at the general public, and the general public, by and large, unfortunately, they're idiots. And people will want Batman that's Batman. I know Batman looks like Batman. Doesn't have that cape. Doesn't wear a hat. Batman has
Batman.
Batman has the ears. Batman has the ears. Where's the Joker? What sort of, I don't get it. What sort of fog? Where's the Batmobile? Where's the horse-drawn carriage?
Don't you want a bat carriage?
Could you imagine a bat carriage? That'd be amazing.
I'd
wouldn't
love
it?
a bat carriage.
Just have like multiple bats instead of horses.
Yeah,
The whole
exactly.
fleet
You're
of
just
bats.
shaking away and there's no horse and you think
They're
this
all-
game's broken, and then it looks up and there's a couple of bats.
It doesn't have a bat signal. There's a bat candle.
Bat signal, yeah.
Yeah, how does that kind of stuff work?
Someone would just hold up like a cutout over.
You
a
know
candle.
when they used
spends
to
like
do
half
those
an hour
cut-out
reloading his pistol.
collages where they would do a profile of someone's head, someone cut it out of paper.
Yeah.
It's basically that. Someone stands next to him whenever he says, get the bat signal out. Someone gets out a bit of paper and carefully cuts out a bat signal.
You'd probably have.
Gets his candle out, lights his pipe and then blows it out and makes it glow.
I'd imagine what you would have had more back in that time, you would have had Commissioner Gordon or whatever Commodore Gordon or whatever the hell he would have been called. And he'd just tap some gentleman on the shoulder. He'd be like a town crier. He would just start ringing a bell and just scream, Batman! Batman! And that would be the back signal from way back when. But I think it's just people want a more straight, honest-to-goodness Batman.
I
and
guess
that's
this
what
would have
you end up
been
with,
around
which
the
is
time
Arkham
of
Asylum.
like the Dark Knight.
Well, I'm happy.
And again, that's the thing, because it would have confused people again that would have seen, the Christopher Nolan sort of series, and you get something different. Like the only time they've done that, which I think might have worked, maybe like the Spider-Man, the sort of Shattered Dimensions.
Yeah.
Right.
When they did. There were
Three
four different types
time
of
zones.
Yeah, that sort of thing. But it was like alternate. So there was the future one, and then there was the sort of steampunky noir
Yeah.
style one. So it might have worked as a sort of a quadrilogy or tetralogy, whatever you call it, of sort of stories that had maybe different Elseworld style Batman.
I mean, I understand that it was kind of, he's a detective, obviously, he's apparently the world's most intelligent detective, but it would have been cool for him to have gone up against Sherlock Holmes, take on Jack the Ripper.
Well, Jack the Ripper would have been the Joker, I suppose.
I
wouldn't
guess
it,
so,
ultimately?
yeah.
That would
You
have,
could have,
been really
you know,
It
interesting.
would have been cool to see a
Do
Robin
something
as
like
well.
that, and
Some orphan
Yeah.
pulled from a chimney.
Chimney sweep, yeah.
yeah, there you go. I would like that.
Imagine that. He's just like going around doing his Batman business, and it's just a poor little chimney sweep stuck in the chimney. Pulls him out.
Would combat
That's
still be
how Robin-
non-lethal though? Would non-lethal combat in Victorian era? I find that quite weird, considering there wouldn't be any like
It was-
Kevlar armor. If you got shot once or stabbed once, that'd be it. That'd be
Yeah,
game
but
over
it
for
would have
Batman.
been fairly sort of gentlemanly, so it would have been a lot of slapping,
With a
slapping
cane.
in the face with the back of a glove.
Just
Just
a-
over time.
I don't challenge you to fisticuffs.
That's all right, yeah.
Yeah, some guy's committing a crime. You just go up with the glove, slap him across, and say, "I challenge you."
But
that'd
could
be
you imagine
great.
the police as well? Because the police would still be against Batman, just running after him with a whistle.
The peelers.
Yeah.
I say, stop. You there in the hat.
It'd be good. It'd be a good it's a good concept, but one I think would be very hard to fulfill properly. Same with, because you say it's coming out at the similar time
Would have been
as
Assassin's Creed Syndicate. At the
That's
end of the
exactly
day,
what I was
wouldn't it?
thinking.
Really.
with Batman.
Yeah.
I don't know. I find it hard to picture a successful Batman, that kind of era game. I find it hard to picture.
I suppose it's
works.
just an interesting idea because Batman obviously clearly works in the modern setting. We've done
Yeah,
they're going to
definitely.
work. What's
All
that?
the
They're done by
gadgets. I mean, that's a
Rocksteady,
big-
all that sort of stuff. It's an interesting idea, but maybe it was just a risk too far. Clearly, they hadn't spent huge amounts of money on it. Hadn't
No.
gone too far down the line.
Well, I don't know what Day One Studios has ever done before.
Not a clue.
I've never heard of them until
neither
I
have I.
researched it.
No,
So maybe that was their one and only.
which would be a shame because
Yeah.
it was an interesting idea. Maybe they just didn't get the license. I mean, I'm assuming Warner Brothers either signed off on this ahead of time, or they did it to say to Warner's, "Look, we've tried this based on this comic or this story."
I mean, why do all
Can
the
we run with
groundwork?
it?
I suppose if you want to promote and get a concept up and running and you want to pitch it,
I suppose
and
you've got
get
to show
there,
it
you've
off.
got to show off something.
Yeah.
I suppose you've got to do something.
Yeah.
But hey ho.
I think it'd have a better chance now, just because of the Dark Knight films, and then you've had Batman vs Superman. So maybe there'd be more people that are interested and actually looked up more about Batman himself.
It's not
I
like
don't
one that
know.
can go to a Kickstarter, is it? Though, because like you
No.
said, it's a license.
Yeah.
The
It's
license.
too precious to Warner Brothers.
No, it's
Exactly.
worth. I mean,
Probably
Batman
their
must be
biggest
worth.
license.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Harry
Yeah.
Potter.
that's Harry Potter true.
Well, yeah, but you're not like to see any games from that because no one gives a shit about Harry Potter.
There
now
was that
there's
one which is just god awful.
Well, there are like
First-person shooter.
Quidditch.
Oh, the Quidditch game.
There was
No,
one
I'm
like
going
PS
to defend that.
Yeah,
That
was
game
it?
was fucking amazing.
And what about the first-person
What?
shooter movie one they did? It kind of like properly was a first-person shooter, and that
was
was.
it a Connect?
What did you
No, it was your wand. You had your wand out, pew, all that kind of shit. It was
Wand
awful. Maybe. No, it was a
When
movie.
we had
It was
the
a movie
ca-
recreate.
the camera, and it would film you with your
No, you
move
would-
control.
with your wand out?
I don't think so. Get your wand out.
Yeah, I watched a guy playing that, and there was this thing in the Wonder Book where it was basically Harry Potter world,
yeah.
and you had to put out these on the screen. You could see a castle, the inside of it. There were bats flying around
No,
everywhere,
it's not that.
and you had to wave your move controller around, and it would spray out water that would hit the bats, and they would
Batman wouldn't be
flap
happy
away
about
because
that,
they
would
didn't
he?
want to get wet. But he was playing it cross-legged on the floor, and he sat there and he'd had a load of beers, and everybody was on this was on like Twitch or something, and he was very funny, bit drunk. He basically sat down. He was just like so bored with this game. I'll turn the page over and see what the next game is in this Wonder Book, and it was this bat one, and he just sat there, and he had his finger on the button without knowing it, and instantly a jet of white love magma came from an area that would look inappropriate, that was just covering all these bats. And he proceeded to actually literally piss himself while this water was spraying out of this move control on the screen.
I'm sure Batman would
It's one
have
of the
something to say
funniest. I'll
about
have to
that.
show you. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
It's for kids, folks. It's for kids.
But it's obviously not that first-person shit. You were talking
No,
about something
there's
else.
a movie remake they did. Well, we've waffled completely away from it anyway. I mean, I was talking about Warner Brothers, but
Yeah, we'll move on from that now.
yeah,
So
because otherwise we can talk about that for hours.
Come
Let's
on then.
crack on.
filmic connections and licensing connections was GoldenEye.
okay.
Oh, you and your GoldenEye.
Me and my
Not your luck.
GoldenEye. Yeah.
This is disappointment. Remember, I mean,
No, deceitful,
Deceit-
or
oh,
the
yeah,
sense that it was not. It started off life as something different,
yeah,
and then ended up being what it turns out to be. Plus, you got the fact that the game itself was remade, ready to be released, and it was just those damn pesky lawyers getting in the way of getting a good game released.
damn
Because
lawyers.
I think it was Microsoft and Nintendo couldn't sit at the table without just throwing shit at each other. They just couldn't come to terms regarding the re-release of the remastered GoldenEye, which was a pest. However, GoldenEye originally started off, this is for the N64 of course, as a sort of virtual cop. It was an entirely on-rails shooter. And about halfway through the production of this game, they switched it out and they turned it into the game that we had now, which was arguably the game that sort of proved that you could get first-person shooters to work on a console.
Yeah,
Because really before that, there was not really a lot to get. It was something that was really just for the PC games.
Yeah.
So it's a very important game, and it's sort of all the more important given that Rare Studios had never done a shooter before prior to this. So this was their first bite of the cherry. as far as this is concerned. But the fact that they were brave enough to switch from something that would have been relatively easy, I suppose, as a on-rail static shooter, to go for something as immersive as this was, to switch it to a proper first-person shooter. And it was filled with all the sort of little subtleties that had never been seen before. So things like you could shoot the hats off enemies, and they would react if their hat had been shot off. It was amazing. There were huge amounts of depth in that game, and I sunk hundreds and hundreds of hours into that overall. I do remember, as I had told you during my GoldenEye years.
Yeah, I'm trying to not think of it.
But it's the first time I'd ever played a game literally entirely through the day. Such was my addiction to that game, which has never happened really since, I don't think, with any game.
So this had a single player, obviously.
That's right, it was only single player.
But you could do split screen multiplayer, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, yes, in what turned up, yes.
Okay, so you played this for weeks and weeks and weeks. What did you do? Just replay it over and over?
Yeah, because there were 3 different difficulty settings.
Okay.
Which were all pretty difficult. Well, certainly they were far more difficult when you got to the other end. But we played multiplayer just for...
Oh, okay, so it wasn't just you.
No,
I thought you were just saying it was just you and you were playing GoldenEye day in, day out forever.
That single day, though, that was me just playing the single player just for the entirety of the day. But every evening was GoldenEye.
Yeah,
it was
I remember because I had friends. All I wanted to do
did.
was play FIFA, which was a really good co-op game on the N64. FIFA 64, and all I wanted to do was play that. And they were all football fans, but no, GoldenEye was what they all played. We'd go around, they get a load of tinnies in, and I'm just sitting there going, I fucking hate GoldenEye. I'm not a fan of like multiplayer shooters at all, and I can see
I never have been. Really, that's almost the only one I have been.
I can see why I'm in the minority because everybody loves that kind of thing. And I can see that it's had a polish to it, and people love that game. I mean, my friends were adoring it, just like you were. But it wasn't one that I kind of... I would have preferred the on-rail shooter to what actually appeared, which was the GoldenEye that came out. But then that's just me. I'm obviously...
But it's one of those things... I just think it's an interesting thing that this was not the game that was originally sold to people. And obviously, I would say it turned out a lot better for everyone in that respect. And, Rare would not be a company that we would necessarily still be aware of today, had they gone with their original pitch, their original thought for the game.
Yeah.
Rare are, still a powerhouse, to a degree, I suppose. But it's bought by Microsoft for a large amount of money, and they're still a recognisable name.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think they're independent now, aren't they? Because they're doing ukulele.
That's done by some of the guys that used to be.
Playtonic Games is essentially the guys that originally made Banjo-Kazooie, and they decided to split away from Rare and go and do their own thing. And as they couldn't make Banjo-Kazooie the third, because obviously Microsoft now own Banjo-Kazooie. They had to essentially make their own game. So Ukulele is a spiritual successor.
Made by some of the team.
Made by the guys that originally did. I think they've got almost everyone that did. The guy that did the original music, I'm sure he's on board, so that it still sounds the same. And I think almost everyone that was involved in the original Banjo-Kazooie is on board with this.
So Rare doesn't exist anymore?
No, they do.
Oh, it does, yeah.
Because obviously you got Rare Replay, which was literally all just remasters of what had already come out. But there was no new games in it. No. But what was the latest Rare game? I don't think there will be one, will there? Because that's why I assumed that most of the team that were Rare had gone to a new studio.
So yeah, Rare are currently working on Sea of Thieves, which is the Xbox exclusive pirate game, like open world MMO kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we don't know a huge amount about it just yet.
But the water looks lovely.
It did.
Really good. Obviously, what I like about that is the piratey setting. So you've got the water, the beach, sand, volleyball.
Anything to get back to
it looks quite cartoonic, doesn't it? It's quite.
Yeah, I think it's still. It's still.
Yeah.
It's got really poor artists.
Is it going to be released as a cartoonic game, or are they going to try and make it hyper realistic?
No. It's going to have that cartoon look to it. That's what they sold it on initially.
Yeah,
because it kind of reminds me of like a mobile game advert at the moment.
I think we've just not seen
enough,
huge amounts recently, so I think this E3, I dare say, will be the time for them to really...
It's got a Clash of Clans look to it.
I think you and I watched a very small snippet on a laptop, and I was like, it looks Clash of Clansy. Yeah, it does look very...
In its look, not in its gameplay. I think the gameplay is, like Harry was saying, like an open world type MMO. But yeah, it's got that style, is the word we're after.
There you go, style.
Yeah, it's funny you picked out, because obviously you mentioned GoldenEye, and then your game prior to that It's funny you mentioned Resident Evil. You've picked 2 successful games, although they promised something different from conception.
Yeah.
What we actually got was still 2 really good games.
Yeah.
And we've only mentioned failures. It's just kind of bizarre. That's all.
Yeah. I suppose just the other one I had down. I said, well, it was almost all of them I had down except maybe Akame, which we won't go into too much really because we did discuss that on the successful failures podcast. Was that originally the inception of that was vastly different. They'd gone for sort of realistic graphics as opposed to the agonisingly beautiful watercolour graphic.
Just works
that
so
they
well
put
for
in,
it.
which just works. You can't imagine it was any other way.
No.
By phone.
Do you say by phone or my phone?
By phone.
Yeah. He's very much a wanted man. I don't know if that's all of the mafia trying to get hold of him.
Yeah, Tony.
Tony.
It's Tony and Paulie.
Tony
Both
and
after me.
Paulie.
Yeah.
Blimey.
Tony's poorly.
Oh, yeah.
That's what got him into trouble, calling him Paulie.
Gotta give him some lemsip.
You all look the same to me. With your slick black hair and your pinstripe suits.
That is racist. Wow. That is huge. Anybody else you want to offend around the world?
The Spanish.
Okay. Anyway, let's talk about another game.
Harry's turn, I believe.
So one that I thought of, and it was originally just Prey 2, but it's also kind of gone off into Prey 1 as well. Prey 1, I didn't realise, took 10 years to develop.
Really?
Because that was one that was just given off to so many different companies and developers because it had the ropiest development cycle. It was a lot of the time it was key people working on it that just left, and so they had to call someone else in to try and fix it, and then that didn't work, so pass it off to another company to deal with it, and so on and so forth. But it started its development in 1995.
Who started its development? Who made it?
It's a human head.
Human Head were the guys on the tail end of it,
Okay.
but it was originally 3D Realms.
Oh, yes, of course
Well, it was 3D Realms.
Yes,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes, I do remember that now.
Because they have, at that time, they'd obviously got Duke Nukem. The
Yeah.
success of that. They had their hand in so many pies
Yeah.
that they ran out of
Oh, yeah.
hands. Just too many pies in this room. But yeah, go on. 3D Realms were making this.
Yeah, and so it just ended up getting shifted and shifted around until another company, which was Human Head, got a hold of it in 2001 and kind of got a good...
Grip.
Grasp.
Yeah, Human Head essentially got a concept and an idea behind what they wanted the game to be that Bethesda, I think it was Bethesda at the time,
They published it, yeah.
yeah, really liked and just kind of said, yeah, we're wholeheartedly going to support this. And to my surprise, when I looked into it, it had really good reviews.
I really like that game.
The original, I think, is excellent.
I
That's
really,
the thing, because
really like it.
when I played it, I thought it was god-awful.
Really?
I absolutely thought it was a piece of shit.
What out of it? Why? You just felt it was just generic or dull? Because it had some really interesting ideas. It was a sort of head fuck of a game.
Yeah,
Which
because
I
you
quite
had the
liked.
portals and then you were inside the intestines of a living ship for a lot of it.
Yeah.
And your girlfriend was being ripped apart in front of you. And, there was a lot of filler levels, I'll give you that. But I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I really did.
enjoyed Prey.
Because I think it may have just been down to my friend was playing it at the time, so when I went to his, just to chill with him, he put it in, just started playing on the game, and then I had a go, and it was like halfway into it, so I was like, what the fuck's happening? I don't care. Give me Call of Duty. And that was it.
Give
So,
me Call of Duty.
yeah, so because of that, I
Poor that
just...
you are.
I know,
You filthy
I know.
bastard.
I was kind of blown away by that mechanic where you could become your spirit and then move to a different part of the platform to fix a puzzle.
Yeah.
For you to then go back into your body and then move on. I thought that was kind of like...
They're all really interesting ideas. It
Yeah,
looked, at the
and
time,
the
it
portals in it
fucking
were
looked
like,
amazing.
wow. The fact that you could look into a portal and it would just see the inside of another room through that gap.
Sounds like we're talking about a TV show. Oh, what's it? Carry on, I forgot what it's called. So.
EastEnders.
No, not East. Yeah, Bobby B or whatever his name is. Those
The hell program are you talking? Stargate?
No, those. It was on BBC Three. Crack on.
So yeah, Prey 2 essentially started development straight after the first one to its huge success, which I had no idea about. And once again, that was one... It didn't get moved around constantly, but it was one that was shouted about by one of the key guys.
Oh, hang on.
Primeval. Sounds like Primeval.
Primate, that was ITV.
Fucking
Sorry,
awful.
but it sounds like Primeval.
You should have made sure they were dinosaurs.
Yeah, that's like the
That
key
was the
thing.
key thing.
Because there were a lot of
I
dinosaurs.
forgot those dinosaurs. I remember saber-toothed tigers, but for some reason I thought Primeval when you said that.
Okay.
So there we go, folks.
Was that worth it? Was that really worth it, guys?
Because it's not really anything like that.
Waste
I'm
of
glad
time.
you got that out, though.
Yeah,
That was good.
yeah.
Well done.
So anyway, yeah, it was just in development for a while, and no one had heard anything about it. And there were rumours going around saying it was cancelled. And then Bethesda at the time were just not commenting on it. Then it was like one E3. They're like, "Oh yeah, it's definitely cancelled, isn't it?" And then Pete Hines was like, "No, it's not been cancelled. It just hasn't met our quality yet." And so still nothing about Prey 2 thus far.
Didn't they? They obviously
It's a
they
super
showed.
impressive trailer.
Yeah, the trailer but it was so different to the first Prey
Yeah.
that it was you were just an alien bounty hunter.
Yeah.
So this was, I mean, essentially from what I was thinking, I don't think you played the same
No, you weren't.
Native American
He was.
guy. Oh, was it?
No, it wasn't the same guy, but he was Native American.
Yeah, in the
is what I'm
first
trying
one.
to say.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of his name as well. I had it a second ago.
I couldn't tell you. But it was, I suppose, it was bordering on the whole sort of Far Cry almost thing, where it's the same gamey type mechanic, but the stories themselves are not connected at all.
Yeah.
It just borrows the same name. But from what I had read fairly recently, there's rumours that it's still not quite cancelled.
Yeah, so they still want to work on it, but they just haven't quite got the idea there yet.
Because this would have originally been would have been on the previous generation, the 360 and PS3.
That's the weird thing, when I looked into it, it was like PC, PlayStation 3 and 4, Xbox 360, and that was it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I can
kinda
only assume it,
confused with
obviously, if it does come out, it's not coming out on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation
not
3
at this
anymore.
point.
But it will just be a next-gen thing, if I suppose we see it. But Bethesda got a fair amount on their plate at the moment.
Yeah, they really do.
Anyway, so they don't need it
No,
now,
not
I
at all.
suppose. So maybe it's just something they have knocking around in the background. But maybe we'll see something this year, because they're doing another conference again, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what have they got left on the table? Obviously, they've got Dishonored 2, which I'm assuming they will show off
Yeah.
in a fairly big way.
I guess that would be like the Spotlight one.
Maybe some new Fallout DLC.
I thought we've had everything.
No, the
Not
first
yet. I think there's
round.
one or two more.
Oh, okay.
First round, because remember the previous ones all had previous two Fallouts had 5 bits of DLC,
Okay, I was
and we've
thinking
only
four.
had at least 5.
There'll be a lot of Dishonored, I think. If they announce, I was so hyped for Prey 2 because I really did like Prey, the first one.
Yeah.
And that footage they showed, although nothing like the original Prey, the idea behind it and the way they showed that video, I realised a lot of it was pre-rendered, but it kind of it was almost like Blade Runner meets Space Precinct.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, bit of Mass Effect in there as well.
Yeah.
It had that kind of like, you have to research your bounty. You then have to go out there and take the bounty out. You have bar shootouts in some sweaty underground modern sort of Blade Runner-esque type bar.
Yeah.
You're blowing things up, bullets flying.
So is this
That's what it looked like. And then guy was sort of scanning the room as he was shooting, and then he lassoed this criminal alien. And you had all these aliens speaking different languages, and they were all kind of, just think Mass Effect. And it was that kind of thing, but on a much more grander scale. But you kind of had parkour elements to it in first person. Think sort of GTA with its first person, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was so hyped for that, and when they cancelled it, I think a lot of people, again, a massive sigh from the internet
Yeah.
of, really like the concept, but
Done it again.
why have you got rid of it?
Yeah. But I suppose it's, hats off to a degree. If they had decided that ultimately where they were with it was not where they wanted it to be, it'd best to release something that is actually going to work really well. Or if it's not going to live up to people's expectations at that point, then just don't have it.
Yeah.
Because if you end up like that Haze situation where people are expecting it to be fantastic, and if it's not, if it's just sort of average, it just gets savage, and then you just pissed away X amount of money. Because the other thing you have in this day and age, it's not just making the game. It's like films. You've got to promote the shit out of it, and that costs money. Now you've got to pay for all the advertising. You've got to send loads of copies out to reviewers and wine them and dine them, and host events to get it played everywhere, and hand jobs and
Sell my dick.
all that. Yeah, on the moon, motherfucker.
Hand jobs on the moon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking of 3D
jobs.
realms, no, not hand jobs.
Okay, sorry. Maybe later.
You can talk to Simon about that later. But talking of 3D realms,
Just form an orderly cube. Only got the 2 hands.
Double Dutch runner.
they
I don't know
also-
what that is, but I'm prepared to learn.
They also gave us another, this one was more than 10 years in development, 15 years in development game, which was Duke Nukem Forever. And this originally had been announced in 96.
So it was going to be a Nintendo 64 game?
Was it originally as early as 96?
Yeah, 96, because Duke Nukem, obviously everybody was playing it because it was very successful on your PC.
Because I remember a game on the
and an Atari Lynx, I think, or something like that.
But I remember on the PS1, there was a Duke Nukem game. Duke Nukem in Time, or
it was like a port sort of tribute game made by a different studio.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it wasn't 3D rounds.
Okay.
I think it was something to do with Apogee, and Apogee software were...
Oh, Apogee.
Is it Apogee? I always said Apogee.
Okay,
I like Apogee.
I believe it's Apogee, but
okay.
Apogee, let's call the whole thing off.
You say tomorrow, I say Apogee. We both can't speak. But, yeah, Duke Nukem Forever, 15 whole years in development. Famous for its tagline, it's ready when it's ready.
Mm.
And
it was never
so
ready.
many people jumped ship on that. It was unbelievable. The budget in 1995 was 30 million.
Which is a ridiculous amount of money back then.
So that's about 100 million.
Yeah.
Maybe even more these days. For a game that came out that was effectively... People were just using it as a coaster.
Yeah.
It was that rubbish. It was just...
It wasn't even so retro
2011
it was just dull.
It wasn't anything. It wasn't even funny. It wasn't witty. Duke Nukem had its time.
Yeah.
And it had its wit and its strippers and its gory aliens and its
he was kind
cheesy
of
American...
Yeah, the pastiche of the sort of Arnold Schwarzenegger sort of 80s action hero.
Yeah,
I mean... We'd all moved on from that at this point.
I think all that was kind of dying out in 95.
Yeah.
So it kind of had just got caught the tail end of all that 80s pastiche kind of thing and that genre. But to come out in 2011 when you've conceived it in 1996, 15 years later, is ridiculous.
Well, because you have to, I mean, beyond the fact that you have to work your way through the various different generations of machines, you've got to keep changing that. So the engine has to change every time. The control method has to change every single time.
Well, it went through 3 studios. So this was 3D Realms to begin with. And obviously they were making Prey. They were making shitloads of shit.
Yeah.
You know, if that's a phrase, I'm going to coin it. It then went to Piranha Games.
Oh, Piranha, yeah.
And Piranha Games apparently then got bought out by Gearbox. Our friends at Gearbox, God, they like fucking things up, don't they?
Yep, they do indeed.
And they finished it. But after they'd finished it, they then, I guess, went into hiding. But they came back out again not that long ago. I'm going to talk about a game that Gearbox has decided to deliver us, and that was Aliens Colonial Marines. I'm not sure what it is with Gearbox. I think they're sadists, and I think they like to disturb the world by their disregard to listening to their fans and then poo-pooing on their dreams.
Yeah, it's just how many people they can piss off.
Yeah, I mean, when they announced Aliens Colonial Marines, you're thinking, cool, a proper Marine game for Aliens. You know, Aliens vs Predator was a pretty good game. I quite like that.
Yeah.
But when Aliens Colonial Marines, the promise that gave people and what that delivered, oh my God. I mean, that's like saying, oh, just round this corner, there's £1 million, it's all yours. And then you get round the corner and they literally kick you in the balls while throwing slices of bread at your head until you can't take it anymore. And then saying, ha 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 ha, fuck you, and then running away like a little small child. And then going, God, that was good, we should do that again with the next game. And that's what they keep doing. I don't get it. I mean, what needs to be said about Aliens Colonial Marines? I mean, we all know about it. It was dire. It still is dire. It's never going to be fixed. It's like... How would you explain Aliens Colonial Marines? I mean, the disappointment, the silence and moaning and the sounds of hell that happened on the internet, of people crying in hell when that game came out.
I think that but again, that's born out of the fact that we were being sold something different to what we were expecting. Because originally the concept art or the screens that we had seen looked incredible.
Yeah, the video
richly detailed.
Yeah.
Is it all just like pre-rendered stuff, like all the videos?
I don't know if it was
Massively.
I guess it must have been. But it just ended up looking ropey as fuck. I guess if this was the sort of game that was released early in the life cycle of the Xbox 360 and the PS3, it would have got maybe a little bit more of a pass. And it would have been better received had we not had the promise of something so much better previously. I think that's part of it. Again, that's born out of the notion that if you promise something that is supposed to be amazing, and it looks so different, and plays so different, and then you end up with something that's so generic, it's going to get absolutely ripped to shreds, and rightly so.
Yeah.
I can only describe it, Harry, as you've seen the Aliens movies.
Yep.
Think Aliens. Think, do you want to be Corporal Hicks and kick ass and get the shit scared out of you about how scary these aliens are and live that movie?
Yep.
Fuck yeah. Who doesn't want to do that? It's fucking Aliens. It's Corporal Hicks. It's Michael Bean. Is that his name? Michael Bean. Mm-hmm. You know, he's going to go around kick ass with a pulse rifle. Someone says pulse rifle. Yes, please. Let me shoot something. And then you get delivered a kind of Play-Doh. Just imagine a 4-year-old kid sat down with another 4-year-old kid and had a Play-Doh battle and imagine they were aliens and that's what you got delivered.
Yeah.
You know, they got the plasticine out and said, oh, die, I'm an alien. And that's what you got delivered. And you were promised, be in Aliens.
Yeah.
Be badass.
Plus, it was the concept that this was going to be a sort of sidequel to Aliens. This was going to sort of bridge the gap between Aliens and Alien 3, which was an interesting concept just on its own anyway. If they'd pulled that off, that would have been really interesting.
And so it didn't even deliver on that.
Didn't even deliver on that.
It was just a run-of-the-mill, shitty shooter.
And the AI was fucking appalling.
Yeah, the Jazz Hands Aliens were
Yeah.
a famous comedy moment.
Yeah.
You could literally shoot an alien, it would freeze on the spot, and if it didn't turn into... There was no animation between the alien actually getting shot, dying, lying down and becoming a pool of acid that dissolved. So in the preview trailers that they gave you, the alien would fall down with really nice animation. Parts of its body would have bullet holes. The acid would come out of those holes and then melt the floor. And then you'd have to step over it and it would just be melting everywhere, doing what an alien would do when it dies. What you got was you'd shoot the alien, bullet holes would float in the air. The alien would go from standing to lying without any animation. Then there would be a big pool of green vomit that it looked like that would appear underneath it. The alien would disappear, just disappear, magic. Piff, puff, puff, Great Soprano turns up. Magic the aliens away. Amazing. And this green pile of vomit would just stay there and you would think, yeah, that looks like I've been sick. Because I'm so disappointed about how this game is. It doesn't look like Alien Blood at all. And this whole pre-rendered video that they did for E3 and everybody's looking at it and going, fucking lighting, fucking sound effects, fucking aliens, fucking... Wow, look at this. This is just like, if game is as good as this, then this will be game of the year. This will be game of the decade. And this was all pre-rendered.
On game of the day.
Yeah. It just... I was so excited for that game.
Yeah,
I had a friend of mine who pumped out money for the collector's editions and all this kind of stuff, and this fanfare came out, and boy did it get panned, and rightly so. Yeah, Gearbox. They're just suppliers of vomit in game form.
But they have... I mean, Borderlands is a good series.
Yeah.
It's a bit dull, but yes, it's more polished than the other ones.
I really like it. I mean, I really like Borderlands 1 and 2.
To be
honest...
honest...
And all the DLC, I think, is excellent.
I think it says a lot about Gearbox when they release a Borderlands game and the most successful one was made by another studio, Telltale. And they say that that's the most exciting Borderlands game, even though there's no shooting in it. And it's literally a story mode game.
I love... Yeah, I think I would... I mean, I have to say, I've not played the Telltale one, but I really like the first Borderlands. It's excellent. I sunk hundreds of hours into that across the characters. And the DLC is so good.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's poor, but I think I got a little bit bored. Because I think co-op is a great game.
Yeah.
And that's not my barrel of monkeys. So,
yeah,
I think co-op, it really lends itself to that. I've heard so many people say it's much better that way.
It's good fun, yeah.
You either like it or you don't. But one out of the many games that they've made, and that's Gearbox for you, and Aliens Colonial Marines.
You just think, though, if they make pre-rendered videos and everyone goes nuts for it, that could be the kind of drive to say, well... We know our game doesn't look like this, but if people are so excited for this, I think if we all collectively really push ourselves, can make this happen. But
I think it's frustrating because they can make good games. I mean, whether you like it or not, Borderlands and Borderlands 2, they are good games.
Yeah.
They're mechanically
they are successful.
Really good games.
Yeah.
And they're interesting stories, they're funny, it's exciting, it's got co-op, it works on all levels as far as that sort of thing is concerned. So they have the capability of making really good games. Now, obviously, you could say that something like the Duke Nukem game was sort of, they had it however far through production it was. And they were just taking what there was, form it, cut it, shape it into a game that could be released.
Yeah.
Because they must have bought it for however much. And it might have been just one of those situations where they just needed to...
Bag of minstrels, I think.
But if we're going to make anything out of this, we're going to make some, knowing full well that there would be enough people that would buy it just off the back of the name.
Yeah.
That Duke Nukem is finally here. I remember when it was announced that, the game was actually coming out.
Yeah.
Going into Game Station and walking up to the counter and going up to Ben, I think his name was, the guy that worked there. And he'd sort of said, as he would be trained to do, "Is there anything you'd like to pre-order?" I said, "Yeah, actually, I'll pre-order Duke Nukem Forever." And he just laughed in my face, thinking I was just taking a piss. I said, "No, really, it's
Wow.
It's actually coming out.
Hook, line, and sinker.
But I wouldn't have been alone in that. So there would have been other people that would have been just.
One of my mates bought
I
it.
just got to see what all the fuss was about. Finally, I get to play this game. And enough people would have bought it just off the back of, well, I have to play it. Like, people will buy, assuming it ever comes out, Half-Life 3, regardless of whether it's any good or not. There'll be other people that will just buy it because it's fucking finally here, Half-Life 3. There'll be people that will have never played 1 and 2. There'll be people that probably weren't born when the first one or even the second one came out.
Yeah.
That will get Half-Life 3 because they're just aware of they're aware of the name.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things.
Yeah, exactly.
So money would have been made off the back of that, I dare say.
You know, the irony is it was published by Sega.
What was the original?
Aliens.
Oh, sorry, Aliens. Yes, of course.
Yeah, I was just going to say on that point. It was published by Sega. And funnily enough, they went on to do Alien Isolation
Yeah.
by Creative Assembly, which was a much better Aliens game.
Yeah.
But it's funny that was in production when this one was sort of finishing its production. They must have gone away and gone, you know what, we've got the Aliens franchise. The one we've got here is shite.
Yeah.
We best go and do something. And then they go and do Alien Isolation while they still have the license. It's kind of
And that
ironic,
worked
that's
really
all.
well.
That
I mean,
did
it's nice that they're not based on the films, which wouldn't work at all as trying to adapt those. I think Aliens is probably the only one that would probably work as a game.
Yeah.
Realistically, that could have been turned into a sort of decent third or first person sort of action adventure type game, or even a sort of survival horror type game, I suppose. But they took, Alien Colonial Marines took the idea of, well, what happened between 2 and 3?
Yeah.
What happened to the Sulaku? So an interesting story to be told. And then Alien Isolation is set. I don't know exactly when it is set in the franchise.
Not that
officially, because it's Ripley's daughter who is now in her early 20s.
Yeah,
Goes off to find out what happened. So it's just set somewhere else. But just, set within that universe. So they don't have to be tied to the film franchise, sort of, by the neck.
No, not at all.
They've
No.
got space to move around and tell their own story. And it works really well, because I think Aliens Colonial Marines is obviously based on the action, I suppose you could say, based on the themes and the feel of Aliens as a more action-adventure type film/game.
Yeah.
And
obviously.
Alien Isolation is far more based on the sort of the cold, unnerving atmosphere of Alien, when you're trapped in a haunted house, essentially. Alien was always sort of sold as a haunted house in space, but it's just you trapped with an unknown enemy that you cannot best with the
That's it, you're going to
the
die.
implements to hand.
Yeah, but there you go. Just ironic that they did that.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move away from Gearbox. We've given them enough time.
Yeah.
So,
Next one for me. I don't really have a huge amount to say. I suppose I just got a few sort of interesting little tiddly bits that
some honourable mentions.
Super Mario Brothers originally, because obviously Mario Brothers came out in '83, which was the one that sort of no one really remembers. I think that was the sort of single screen, played out a little bit like almost like Joust, in the sense it was just a single screen and people just keep coming out of pipes. It was more of a sort of but puzzle game. It wasn't a platformer really. But then Super Mario Brothers comes out in 1985. But originally, Mario himself had a rocket pack and a gun.
Like a proper gun.
Like a gun, apparently. And the buttons, because obviously it came out on the NES, so you had A, B, and that was it. So A would have been shoot, B would have been dash, and up would have been jump.
I suppose it's more kind to shoot your enemies and foes,
But I
than
guess
actually
instead.
crush them and stamp them out of their shells.
But the way that it's been portrayed in the Mario games, today it's like cartoony. It's not so bad. If like blood and bones gushed out of them.
Then hear that.
Yeah,
you say that, Harry, but why has a plumber got a gun?
Exactly, that's the thing. If he did have a gun, then it would be like, well, this is unfriendly Mario.
Yeah, don't hire that plumber.
Don't want to cross with him. He'll just gun anything down.
Yeah. And why is he kicking the shit out of all my turtles?
Or anything he comes
to
across.
fix the sink, and he's got a gun, and he's kicking the hell out of
There's
my...
nothing he won't kill, with the exception of Toad, Yoshi, and the princess.
He's obviously on
Everything
drugs
else,
because he
he'll
keeps
kill.
headbutting my wall. He's seeing stars. I'm not, but he keeps saying he's seeing stars.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what
Just
it is. When he
constantly
headbutts
shoveling
the wall,
mushrooms
he sees a
into
star, but
Yeah.
actually it's to represent... But we don't. I still think Mario's fucked. So I'm not surprised that he was thinking of giving him a gun.
But it's just that's something that obviously didn't happen.
Thankfully.
And then, obviously Mario is the little plump...
Make him more vicious.
Yeah, that we know and love today. Quake, originally an RPG, which I would say was a much more sort of slower fast-paced thing.
I just can't
And they-
imagine it, really.
And apparently they couldn't get the RPG elements to work properly, or
Yeah.
quite properly. So they sort of
just shoot shit.
revised it back into a first-person shooter.
Just shoot shit. It's kind of weird that they did. I mean, there was never a Doom RPG, was there, or anything like that?
No, not that one that I'm aware of, certainly.
And that's weird. Quake RPG. I mean, I had the environment.
I think that was it. Just,
Lends itself to a gothic castle, and
Yeah.
you're a mad knight with a shotgun.
well, apparently you were sort of a Thor-esque type character, and you did walk around with a hammer. That would have been your weapon of choice.
Yeah.
That type of thing. But it would have had a sort of, medieval fantasy type setting, and it just sort of evolved into a fast-paced shooter. I mean, it's one of those things that Quake was never something I got into. Doom I sort of played way back when.
Quake 2 was amazing.
But I don't know, what was it just because it was sort of
Just born out of the success of
fast-paced,
Quake.
but just a fast-paced shooter?
Yeah,
Well,
nothing
I always
else.
think of, in my head, Quake is just Doom. It's just not in hell. Essentially, that's all I ever think of it
Yeah.
as.
I could see that.
I'm sure that's wrong, but just in my head, that's how I sort of process that information. Should point out, by the way, if anyone's still listening, that we've lost Nick. Nick has gone.
I was going to ask him a question.
Tony got to him.
We had some gentlemen of the Italian persuasion came in, whispered in his ear, and he was just sort of ushered away.
They put a bag on his head,
They did.
but he assured us all that it was okay.
Yeah.
So.
I thought it was raining outside. That's why they did it.
Oh, is that what it was? You think it
Well-
might just be that?
It went over his head, not just on the top. That's what I found weird. I mean, or maybe just as like his face being wet.
Maybe.
Maybe they just don't like his face.
Or that.
I don't like his face, but I wouldn't go so far as putting a bag on his head.
No. Anyway, so he's gone, maybe to be never seen again. Anyway, just thought I'd mention him. He's not just being
Bye.
quiet. He's not
Bye,
just being quiet. That's the point I'm trying to make. I've not drowned him in angel delight either.
Sorry, what?
I've not drowned him in anal delight.
I thought you said angel. Sorry.
No.
Any others you want to mention? I have a couple I was going to say. Obviously, I'm a big fan of steampunk, as we talked about before. And one of the games that I was dead excited for, this was back in good old 1996, was made by a company called Ocean, who people might know, pretty famous back in the day. It was called HMS Carnage. And this was right up my street. It was kind of, imagine mixing Victorian England with steampunk, set it on Mars. So think kind of John Carter on Mars with steampunk air battles with the Red Baron.
Sort of Jules Verne
Yeah.
type thing.
It was kind of
Sort of
big.
Nemo-esque.
Yeah, that's exactly right. A kind of naval warfare with air warfare, air combat in like a Sop with Camel or a biplane of some nature. And then going back to a Victorian mansion that just happens to be sitting on Mars. It was kind of all with a bit of Warhammer thrown in.
Yeah.
In terms of its looks like steel soldiers, kind of, that kind of Chaos Marine look, but a bit with steampunk going on. This game was sort of in development for 4 years. It was going to come out on the Sega Saturn, the PSX, and the PC. At the time, I was well into my PCs, and I was a regular buyer of Edge magazine, and this thing was flagged on the cover. Issue 35, that was how long ago it was. And it just picked everything for me that was great. Now, apparently, it was published by Infogrames, which I think was a French company, and I think
it
they
was.
may have even been bought out by Ubisoft.
That wouldn't surprise me.
They also did another game called Outcast, which was a favourite of mine. But HMS Carnage, that kind of ticked every box in terms of have a fighting multi sort of area fighting game. So you could fly, you could stand and shoot on the ground, or you could command a massive steampunk air carrier that was hovering over a sandy desert of Mars. And then think of, Jolly Blight here, we're taking over Mars, take on the aliens, that kind of thing, and right up my street. Never got finished. 4 years in development, loads of screenshots shown everywhere, even went to some shows to be shown off, but never got past a alpha. And that was it. I would have liked that.
It's unfortunate when you think of companies that will spend like 4 years or more on a game and then it just ends up getting cancelled.
Yeah.
Because that'd just be the biggest like crushing moment to say you've spent 4 years on this and it got you nowhere.
All for nothing.
Yeah, I just, like you said earlier, Simon, I think if you've got lots of, if you've got lots of thumbs in many pies, you're going to pick the one that makes the revenue back straight away. And unfortunately, those games that are adventurous, I look at something like Quantum Break that's come out, which is a decent game, really well put together and everything. And the fact of the matter is that it's different in terms of it's tried something new. Yes, it's a cover shooter, but it's tried something different, it's tried something new. Comes out, gets a bit of praise, people say, not bad, alright. But if that same company, for example Microsoft, because it was a Microsoft studio that have done it, I've gone, we're going to do another Quantum Break 2? Or, should we just have Halo 6, Halo 7?
Yeah.
Halo 8? Yeah, let's have those. And you just think, it just is a bit...
Yeah, people will play it
kills it off a
safe.
bit.
It may well have been that the, what was it called? Sorry, the Mars one?
Mars one was called HMS Carnage.
HMS Carnage. If it was one of those ones that you couldn't pigeonhole it. Is it just an RTS? Is it a strategy game? It
was supposed to be like Warhawk, if you've
Yeah.
ever played that.
Yeah.
I never actually played that, but I knew it was kind of like a ship-to-ship fighter,
Yeah.
but you could get out and run around on the floor.
But perhaps if it was one of those ones that couldn't easily be pigeonholed, if you couldn't sort of easily sell it to someone, if you're trying to describe something simply and just say it's a third-person cover shooter, right, okay, got it.
Yeah, I mean...
This is a first-person shooter, great.
Some people of the gaming public can be a bit fickle, and if you don't explain it in the first sentence,
Yeah,
they're not sold.
Yeah.
Or what do I kick? What do I shoot?
yeah.
If it's not done, if you just go a little bit more, if you use a bit more brain matter, you might get it. But if they have to, people won't like it.
I suppose the shame of it is that it's the sort of thing that might sort of flourish now with the number of sort of indie games that do come out.
Kickstarters.
Kickstarter and all that. But
Definitely.
back then it was just something that either it was going to make bank or it wasn't. And if you've already put X amount of money into this and you realise that we've got to put more money into this to actually get this out if it's not ready, but we're not convinced it's actually going to make that money back, the easiest thing to do is just draw that line underneath it and say, look, this is it.
I think as well, if you look at it, it's a sign of the times. Back in 1995, 1996, you didn't really have indie games. You had
Exactly.
things that were coming out, and it was all supposed to be AAA titles produced by lots of people. And when you have a look at something that's 4 years in development, but nothing's come of it after 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, games come out in a year
Yeah.
that, succeed and do well. Admittedly, yes, there might be a difference in scale and scope of the game, but if it takes 4 years and nothing's happened of it, and all you can show off is something that's not progress far enough to make people go, I get it, I see what's going on, then that shows you troubled development time, and that maybe is what put a final nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
I think that probably is what killed it more than the fact that people didn't get the concept. But I also agree with the fact that you say, if you can't pigeonhole a game straight away so people can go, that's what it is, I'm interested or I'm not. I mean, this is the problem we've got with No Man's Sky. I know we keep going on about it. That's another big worry of mine that's coming out. This is a game with so much hype.
Yeah.
It's unheard of hype, I think, in terms of what people expect it to be and what it's going to come out and be. That's my biggest worry.
But then sometimes you do have to have those games that break the mould. Yeah, at some point there was not a first-person shooter.
Yeah.
There was not a genre that existed, and then there you have it.
Yeah.
And that something has to be the first platform, or the first RTS, or the first whatever. And this is going to be the first of whatever you would call it. But I don't think the type of this game is that, I don't think there's anything else that can realistically follow it.
No.
I just can't see how it can work.
There was one other mention I was going to mention. I'm not sure if you'd mentioned this before, Harry, but Silent Hills, was it? Did you bring that up?
No, I hadn't spoke about that just yet, but it was on my list.
So the thing I was going to say that's insane about this is they had a working demo that they put out to the public, and that everybody went, awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Loved
Can't
it.
work it out, but it's awesome. Or, I work it out, it's great. It's Silent Hills. They do it, they give you the reveal, they put you the best director in it, or one of the best directors, they put you one of the best game designers, and they put you a really popular cast member in as the main guy. And then suddenly, can't have it. What the fuck's going on there? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the interpretation of insanity.
Yeah.
I mean, how much do people want that game?
That's the thing I don't sort of understand about the whole sort of Silent Hills business, because there's been umpteen lines written and stories written about sort of Konami and how terrible they are as a company, how badly they run their company, and it's all about money. Any business is ultimately, but this was something that had surely success stamped all over
Yep,
it. If anything was
exactly.
going to be a kind of slam dunk win, it was going to be this. And perhaps, I think you may have to look at Kojima to a degree, and if obviously the relationship between Kojima and Konami was not anything larger than or anything greater than, say, Frosty in the making of Metal Gear 5, Konami were just reluctant to, I can't have another 2 years of this. It's just
£100 million
too
pounds
much.
is a lot
It
to
is.
put into the development of a game that's
And they did say, how many copies
how long
did they
did it take
say?
to make? Not 5 years. It was a
Something
long
like that.
time.
It was a long time, but they had to sell 5 million copies or something like that for
Yeah.
it to realistically sort of break even
I
properly.
don't think they have.
No.
And I don't think they have. And it's the sort of thing that, unless you could say the budget for this was going to be, relatively small. But the problem, I think, with Kojima is that, the ideas just keep on coming and the game keeps on adapting and changing. And unless you keep him on a very, very tight leash, he's just going to keep on. The stories for Metal Gears that they've gone on, I think they just got, as we discussed, got more and more convoluted as time went on.
I obviously understand you're a business, you've got to make profit, fair enough. Well, if you are the holder of the keys to the coffers, why even let PT be made? If you aren't happy with what he's doing with Metal Gear and he's spending too much money and you need to get that reined in and finished and done and get it out and make your money back, why even let that spread to the development of PT at that time, which was obviously being developed around the same time, to then put it out there and then not do anything about it if you're not going to do it? I just don't understand, because you've just wasted more money and more time than having a go at the person who's making your game for you would be wasting anyway. Yes, Kojima likes big budgets. Yes, he spends a lot of time making games, but he's a master of his craft. He makes good games that a lot of people love, puts a lot of effort into it. You see it in the finish of it. But even he must have thought, all right, so I've got Metal Gear and I've got PT, but okay, if you are going to cut my budget, why are you letting me do PT?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you, at the end of the day, are never going to release it. So that to me,
it doesn't, because it was success. I mean, Konami was saying that was wildly successful. Huge amounts of PR, massive amounts written about it. Everything about that was a success. So you're right. If they didn't want to go ahead with it, why did they even let him just do that as a taster, as a teaser?
Yeah.
And the biggest PR it got was that girl finding out it's Silent Hills that went viral with that video.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't get much better free PR than that.
No, not at all.
I mean, that's probably got more PR than they paid to have PR.
Absolutely.
And you don't do that game?
Yeah.
Anyway.
It seems bizarre.
I think something about Kojima science. I'll just say Kojima science.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. I don't think we will ever understand what exactly happened between Kojima and Konami.
No.
So it's just something within those two that had caused it to just get cancelled, but we'll never know.
Yeah, that's the thing. We will never know.
Yeah, I think that was probably of the games I've said tonight, that's probably the biggest in terms of the hype and what it gave you, even down to a playable demo that then through insanity never came out, but promised the world, it showed you it could give you that in the demo, and then said no, you can't have it.
And I think that will almost be forever from now on, be the sort of number one or within the top 5 of any list that comes out from here on out of the most baffling cancelled games, or whatever. That's going to be their sort of almost number one with a bullet.
Don't doubt it.
I don't think there's going to be really anything else. Obviously, there may be things in the future we won't know, but that will always be one of those ones that the what if, the great what if.
Stands, yeah. And there you go.
And that's about it.
Yep.
That's about all she wrote.
I think we should have cancelled this episode.
Yeah.
And there you go.
So we droned on long enough.
That was our deceived effort.
Yeah, effort.
Thanks,
for effort,
Nick.
perhaps D in execution.
Yeah, we promised big, but
Yeah.
we
We delivered small.
Yeah, well, I'm used to that.
You can polish us off.
You mean, can I say goodbye?
And then you can say goodbye.
You can all
ready.
fuck off.